Well, the quality of releases this year has been just completely, or when I say this year, I mean in the last 12 months have just been completely obscene. I cannot recall struggling more to pull together a top 30. I mean, and when I say pull together one, it's been more a case of actually whittling everything down to 30 releases because when we get to my list, I'll potentially reiterate this point, but I think this year numbers 1 and 2 and number 30 were the hardest. 1 and 2 for reasons I'll explain nearer the time. 30 because when you put down number 30, okay, beyond this, there's a bunch of other bands that are missing out, and so many of them. If they put out a record in 2010, it's a top 5 album. Greetings, Legion, and welcome to episode 208 of Into the Necrosphere, the first in the 2024 campaign, and I am kicking this one off with malicious intent. I'm starting my 3-part series counting down my favorite episodes of 2023. My guest for the first part of this odyssey is the great and powerful Nathan Glover of the band Graveir. He, of course, is also active with the excellent record label Gutter Prince Cabal, and many of you that have listened to past episodes where he's featured on the podcast will know the man has impeccable taste. So naturally, we had to start by counting down his top 10 of the past 12 months, and then we counted down my numbers 30 to 21. That is going to be coming your way very shortly, but before we get to that, I'm going to give you guys a little taste of some new Graveir music. They dropped a New Year's surprise on us by way of a split EP with the band Thrall. We are going to listen to a track off of that right now. This song is called Dismal Rebirth. That was Dismal Rebirth by Graveir off the split EP with the band Thrall, available right now on Bandcamp. I'll post a link in the description to the podcast so you can head over there, buy yourself some music, support a hard-working independent band, and let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere who sent you. If you are new to the podcast and you like what you've heard so far, then consider grabbing the closest folding chair and beating the subscribe button on your platform of choice until it begs you for mercy. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and X. And if you want to show your love and support for the podcast, then you can head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store, pick yourself out a t-shirt or a hoodie or whatever else catches your fancy, in addition to the comments, the likes, the shares, and everything else that the Legion does week in and week out. I am also a member of perhaps the finest stable of content producers ever assembled, the Horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Every Monday, we kick your week off with Brandon Legion hosting another episode of the excellent Horror Wolf 666. Yours truly casts hexes and slays poses every Tuesday on Into the Necrosphere. Every Wednesday, Sensei Mike Hill brings you another installment of the long-running, always brilliant Everything Went Black. A personal favorite airs every Thursday in the shape of Necromaniacs. That is also hosted by Sensei Mike Hill alongside his co-hosts Sheriff Mike Scondado and Professor Jeff Kashid. They review old and new horror movies, a great way to get set up for the weekend. Also, every Thursday and every Sunday, the Sinister Minister Cole Haikara brings you another journey into the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric. Cole is actually going to be my guest on this coming week's episode of the podcast, by which I mean next week's episode, as we continue our countdown of the best albums of 2023. His podcast, of course, is Soul Knox. And then finally, rounding out this battalion against mediocrity, the great and powerful Cheyenne of the band Trivax, delivering another episode of Iblis Manifestations when you least expect it. He is unbound by routine or by any sort of schedule, but in my absence in particular, while I was whiling away my time in South Africa, he delivered some absolutely sensational episodes. So if you haven't checked those out yet, make sure that you do. You can, by the way, also check out his Instagram fitness page, Trial by Fire Fit. He is now offering, I believe, online training, online consultation for personal training. If you checked yourself out in the mirror and you decided that you want to look like more than chewed up bubblegum, then he's a man to get in touch with. He has got a really fascinating personal story. He lost about 60 pounds in weight over the course of 3 years. He looks like $1 million. He can do the same for you, so head over to his Instagram page, Trial by Fire Fit. Finally, when I am done talking to Nathan Glover, don't go anywhere, because I'm going to be joined by the great Evan Hopper of Quell, alongside his co-conspirator Michael Sigler of the band Catacombs, for this week's installment of the News Rant. We're going to be listening to some new music, and we're also going to be talking about the Quell Catacombs split EP that dropped right before Christmas. For now, though, sit back, brace yourself as we kick off the best albums of 2023 countdown right here on Into the Necrosphere.
How long has it been since you and I spoke? I could swear it's been, I think the last time that we actually did this was last year this time. It doesn't feel like it though, but yeah, how's everything been going with you?
Yeah, look, been pretty busy, as you could well imagine. I don't really like free time, but I think you might be right on that we probably didn't sort of catch up on podcast till the same edition last year. But yeah, I feel like we sort of talk every other week anyway, just to share things back and forward. So it never feels like that long. But yeah, look, been really flat out. Obviously, trying to. We've got the festival coming up. I'm not sure if you've seen the lineup for that, but you know, bands like Earthrot, Pestilential Shadows, Illimitable Dollar. So it's quite a big lineup that's on in 2 weeks' time.
So for folks that don't know or that you know that aren't aware, can you just kind of give a bit more info? Yeah,
sure. So basically, there's a festival called Immeasurable Darkness that runs. That's I guess first started last year. The guys from Malignant Aura pull that together, and always a good lineup, good quality extreme metal bands from around Australia. And this year they've pulled together yeah, probably the strongest lineup they've had. So again, the lineup sort of ourselves, Malignant Aura, Pestilential Shadows. What else we got there? Grotesque Bliss, which I think is some of the guys from Grave Upheaval. Earth Rod are playing on there. There's a band called.
I'm glad to hear that they're still going. I mean, it's been a hot minute since we've had an Earth Rod record, and Jared has been pretty quiet on social media as well.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I'm keen to see whether they'll play anything new or not. Because I'm also curious as to what they've been up to. I really enjoyed the album. And yeah, always happy.
Black Tides of Obscurity came out in 2020. So yeah, they're it's year 4 now. They're by typical black metal cycle standards, they're kind of overdue for something now.
Yeah, I'd say that about us as well. But yeah, we're trying. Yeah. It's not for lack of effort.
Well, segue into that. I mean, you guys brought out the EP at the back end of last year. Well, actually, did you drop it? Yeah, you dropped it January 1st.
Yeah, so yeah, I think it just snuck into 2024.
Yeah. The song, first of all, is absolutely sensational. By the time that folks get to this portion of the podcast, I will have played it. So, again, just to remind everyone, it's called Dismal Rebirth. It's on the Split EP that you guys put out on January 1st with Thrall. But only one song, mate, after how's also been about 4 years. I'm assuming you guys are just kind of tickling our testicles a little with this one, just to tease us, just to say this, there's more coming.
Yeah, look, definitely, and I guess that was kind of the intent of it, because we're very, very aware that it's been a little while and probably longer than what we would normally like to get stuff out. And I know probably every time we've spoken, I've been like, yeah, we're working on an album, so most of it was written sort of before COVID, but I guess in between we obviously had COVID, so that put a dampener on things. We've had a lineup change. There's like 2 divorces, some natural disasters. So like every time you get a bit of momentum, and then the other thing is just playing live. So obviously live shows open back up too. So we just did those shows with Pestilential Shadows, and we did the first sort of Gutter Prince hosted show, which was Hebephrenics live debut as well. Really good shows, but you put a lot of work into organising the travel and everything, and by the time you're done, you kind of want a month or 2 off. So that just so it's always something that's dragging it out. But like most of it's written, so it's just sitting down and committing to it. But after this gig, we've all kind of put our foot down and went like, enough's enough. So we need to just get anything else that isn't recording or rehearsing for recording is like on hold. So
yeah. Is put on the back burner, but 2 divorces, bro. That's wild. I mean, I myself have been down that road. So, you're not in that.
No. So yeah, I was weirdly enough during COVID, things were pretty okay for me. I was pretty good in my little bubble, but the world around you sort of explodes, and it was a rough time for a lot of people. So I don't think it was necessarily anything special, but when you sort of go back and look at it and go, yeah, look, here's all the stuff that's happened in between, kind of understand why we haven't necessarily got things out. But, given the strength of like the releases over that period of time, there was definitely plenty of other bands that had fuel in the tank and got stuff out. So, yeah, we've just got to sort of get organized and again, get focused and just be really single-minded with it. So,
well, the quality of releases this year has been just completely. When I say this year, I mean in the last 12 months have just been completely obscene. I cannot recall struggling more to pull together a top 30. I mean, and when I say pull together one, it's been more a case of actually whittling everything down to 30 releases, because when we get to my list, I'll potentially reiterate this point, but I think this year numbers 1 and 2 and number 30 were the hardest. 1 and 2 for reasons I'll explain nearer the time. 30, because, you know, when you put down number 30, you know, okay, beyond this, you know, there's a bunch of other bands that are missing out, and so many of them, you know, if they put out a record in 2010, it's a top 5 album. And that to me is kind of testament to what 2023 has brought us. It's just been nuts.
Yeah, so weirdly enough, I was going to ask you what you thought of the year as a whole, and I'm probably going to take a slightly different tack. So this might be maybe a surprise.
I dare you, mate.
I know.
You're supposed to agree with every single thing I say on this podcast.
Which is why I thought we'd have an interesting conversation. I was really excited when you asked me to jump in. So I actually think probably this year was a little bit of 2023 was a little bit of a step down from the previous years, but I say that in relative terms because overall you look at it and you're like, okay, look, how can you be disappointed with the releases? And you can't. But I think for me, I'm always, and it probably reflects in some of my choices too, but I'm always on the lookout for new stuff. And to me, like a good sign of health is the amount of sort of new stuff that I'm putting into that list. And this year, I think it was a bit more of a mix between, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. So again, like I still found new stuff and there'll be new stuff in there, but there was a lot of older bands that were coming up and finding like a second batch of form and releasing some fantastic records, which is good. Don't get me wrong, it's good. But I think, you know, when I guess your focus is always, and some of it's being, you know, in the label thing and also running a playlist and all the rest of it. But to me, like I would prefer the balance to be more heavily that there's new stuff coming out that sort of knocks my socks off, and there's some really good sort of older bands putting stuff out, but that should be the lesser quantity. So it's a bit of a weird complaint to make, but I also think again, like last 2023 personally for me was kind of a difficult year. There was stuff with work and stuff with life where, you know, I think my outlook on it was probably a bit colored by that as well. And I think, you know, once we get into some of the choices on the top 10, we'll dig into that a little bit more as to, you know, why those particular records were appealing to me. In
as long as it's not, well, you know, this for this particular record is when I was really hitting the crack pipe hard. You raise an interesting point about new versus old. I'm just having a quick scan of my top 10, and without giving anything away, my top 10 features out of the 10, 8 of the bands either have musicians in them who have been prolifically active, by which I mean they've been in a signed band. People of a certain ilk will recognize them. So people that have been in prolific bands, or the bands have been established for 15 years plus, 8 out of the 10. So yeah, that's an interesting stat. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a weird complaint to sort of make, and how you judge the quality of stuff, but you always want the young and hungry bands to be like not necessarily even snapping at the heels of the older bands, but to be like picking up the torch and running with it. So it's a weird ratio thing. And again, you know, I think maybe the year probably colored some of my selections and my feelings towards stuff in general, to be honest. So yeah, let's see where we land.
I do like the fact, though, that this year there were so many, I wouldn't call them redemption stories, but, you know, just so many great examples of salty dogs, folks that have been doing it for a long time, you know, coming out, putting out just phenomenal work. You know, I'm always maybe it's because I'm growing older, but I always root for bands that have been doing it for a while that can keep operating at a very, very high level, because I don't actually think, in the grand scheme of things, there's that many of them, especially not the bands that, you know, 30 years ago would have been considered tier 1. You know, and we can go down a laundry list of who those bands are, but, you know, folks can probably figure out, if they listen to any of my news rants, what my thoughts are on that. But the fact that we had so many, you know, veteran tier 1 bands this year, you know, release, I would argue, some of the best work of their entire career. I mean, that to me is awesome. You know, if any of them, like if you really break it down, many of them probably only have about, you know, 2, possibly 3 at most albums left in their careers. If that's the level they're going to go out on, I mean, more power to them. I love that. I would, and again, as a fan, I would much rather they go out on that high and be remembered for that than, a band that just kind of fizzled out and, were playing the greatest hits when they went on tour, and will always be remembered for that.
Yeah, look, again, I'm definitely okay with it, and the records that are on here, I absolutely love, and you want to see those mainstays and those bands being around, still releasing quality stuff. So it's almost like I'm making the argument that, like, oh, do you want a choice between like this vintage red wine or like this aged Scotch, and you're going, well, look,
Logan Paul's Prime.
and you just go and look, they're both fine choices, but since I'm being a super picky, I'm going to say that I prefer one over the other. So
that's why I always love having you on, because you always have, this has kind of become tradition. We've got, Mike Hill always does the final episode with me. You always do the first. The middle one is, who knows what crazy shit will fucking read out of that. But you always have a very different perspective, and I always appreciate it. But just before we get started on yours, so just so everyone knows the way we're going to format this, we'll have Nathan go down his top 10. And then I'm going to count down numbers 30 to 21 on my side. But life-wise, we may get into it more as we touch on some of these releases. But how have you been doing, generally speaking? You still keeping up the jiu-jitsu? You still doing all of that stuff?
Yeah. So look, been busy training and teaching. So I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but I also do striking. I've taken up striking and been doing that for a while too. So kind of doing the full MMA training. Just really heavy into that. I've had a few health type issues that have kind of made that a bit up and down, but I've been fairly consistent with it, to be honest.
What kind of issues, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, just the joys of getting older. But I've got some issues around like arthritis and stuff with my feet. And I guess basically when they were checking it all out, it was fine and fairly stable, but it wasn't sort of really exactly where they wanted it based on a number on a chart. So they started to mess with the sort of medication and stuff for it to keep it under control. And unfortunately, the side effect of doing that kind of unbalanced what was already okay, but it's stable now. I also managed to catch COVID for the first time, and that kind of really knocked me around as well. And again, just stress stuff with work and a few other things, general life stress that kind of caught up to me a little bit in 2023. But like anything, if you get a sense of what's coming and you know that it's getting to a point where you're not really enjoying things you should enjoy, that it's bad, and you have to get it out on the table and do stuff, get onto it. So it's not like it was in any danger. It was just a few things that were sort of piling up, and you just kind of make a plan to do things differently and push forward. So look, I think this year will be much better, but again, I think a lot of that will have coloured some of the choices that are in the list. So
the first 5 My Dying Bride albums somehow managed to make it into your 2023 list. You need to get on that carnivore diet, mate. That'll that may help for the for your feet.
Yeah, well, weirdly enough, it's often a lot of stuff like alcohol and too much red meat, and because they think it's gout, but I actually have my doubts about it based on the way that it's flared up. So I think it might just be like an inflammatory arthritis, but not what they think it is, which I think is why some of the medication changes didn't work the way they were supposed to.
Yeah.
So I'd love to get back to eating steak more regularly.
Well, I tell you what. So when we were in South Africa, I obviously went hell for leather, not just eating steak, but I mean, I think Paige and I had a dessert with every single meal. And if you've been to South Africa, or people that live in South Africa will know this. My countrymen have a way to make every single dessert not only massive but also as unhealthy as humanly possible. Like, I mean, you can literally, I had an incredible cheesecake the last night that we were there, but you can literally taste the condensed milk in the cheesecakes. So it's like, unbelievably good. But I came back here, weighed myself, and I'm like, fuck, that's the most I've weighed in my entire life. Like not,
Yeah.
and it wasn't massively over what I was when I left, because when I was in South Africa, I was still going to the gym. I was in the swimming in the sea most days for at least 2 to 3 hours. So it wasn't like catastrophic, but I had made the decision when I was on holiday, when I get back, I'm gonna finally take the plunge, and I'm gonna give the carnivore diet a go, which I've never done full bore. People, whenever I tell them I've started doing it, they're like, "What's different to how you normally eat?" Well, it's quite a lot of it is different. I have a raging sweet tooth, which upends whatever good I would do from eating a lot of steak. So this since Monday, and we're now on Friday. It's been 4 days straight, steak, eggs, nothing else. Only thing I've been drinking is coffee and water. And one very interesting change for me health-wise, what I do suffer from and have suffered from most of my life is really, really bad acid reflux. Like I'm talking xenomorph levels of acid reflux. And I woke up on New Year's Eve with like one of the worst bouts of it that I've ever had in my life. And I took the antacids and stuff like that, kind of got it under control, but I could constantly feel that it was there. So I started with carnivore effectively on Sunday afternoon. By Tuesday evening, acid reflux gone, like I never ever had it. I mean, literally, I've not felt that free of it for at least like 4 or 5 years. And obviously, other markers. My energy is great. I've been pretty level most of the day. Still feel fine at the gym. Sleeping phenomenally this whole week. I've really, really slept well. And the other thing, I know it's water weight, but I've already lost on the scale 3.5 kilos. So that'll taper off. What will be the real telling point will be how I feel it probably 3 weeks time from now or 4 weeks time from now. But I'm gonna give it a month and see how I get on. And then see how long and how far I take it for. I'll start introducing some fruit again as well, and later on some cleaner carbs, and then obviously I'll undo all of it next year or at the end of this year when we go to South Africa. but the other thing I've stayed off of is the wine. I do love me some wine, and I got some phenomenal. I bought some really incredible red wines when I was in South Africa, but those will have to stay. They'll have to stay in the cupboard now for a while, for a good few months.
Yeah, look, I find having been on a restrictive diet, so it's like minimal red meat, alcohol, all the good things in life. So I find, I cut it down, but now if I have a steak, you bet it's going to be like Wagyu, dry aged, whatever it is. So I appreciate what I do more. So if I do, go out and have a glass of wine or something like that, it's going to be the best glass that I can find. I'm going to enjoy every drop. So like it's been difficult in one sense, but it's not hard for me to be disciplined with training anyway, because I'm always out training, so I don't necessarily have time. But I guess having that restriction also makes me be able to, when I do those things, really like appreciate that I can do them more.
All right. Well, my friend, let's dive straight into it, and we'll start with your number 10. So best, for everyone wanting a marker, the definitive list of the best records that came out in 2023 begins right now. Forget everything that you read on Decibel and all the other nonsense that was published in fucking at the end of October and the middle of November. This is the real deal. So over to you, my friend.
All right, so I'll quickly knock out a couple of honorable mentions before we get to the 10, because
knock them out before you do your number 1.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
All right, so build up some anticipation. All right, so number 10.
So number 10 is Azagrom, Veil of Death Ruptured. So I guess Azagrom, the female black metal band, which I guess is kind of unusual in and of itself. But I guess that it's very, if you go back to that sort of early 90s black metal, when it was sort of, at its apex, it's really in that sort of vein. So if you like all the old stuff, you're really going to enjoy that. Enjoy the record. I think the riffs are fairly novel. They're not rehashing riffs that I've heard 1,000 times. And the other thing that they're not doing, it would be very easy to sort of lean into that nostalgia bait where, despite the fact that we've got, modern technology now, and you literally have to really go out of your way to make something sound like it was recorded in a trash can. So it's got good production, but they're not overdoing it. It captures the right vibe without trying to try too hard to capture it. That's kind of a pet hate of mine, to be honest, when some band releases a really raw record and you can tell they've had to go to an extreme amount of effort to make it sound like that, because if you buy Reaper or Pro Tools or something now and just hit record, it's not, even if you get your phone out, I mean, Spells of Torment can record their drums on an iPhone and it doesn't sound like that.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's all recorded on an iPhone.
I know Matt does some wild shit when it comes to, like, getting different sounds and stuff like that for, or getting different samples for music, but I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so like the guitars weren't, but all the drums are tracked, and that sounds, it sounds like pretty natural and raw, but it doesn't sound super lo-fi. So I just don't buy. I have a hard time buying when you get a record back that sounds like that. It's almost like if you try too hard to do something, it doesn't feel very authentic. Whereas I think this record feels quite authentic in the sound, because they didn't try too hard on those things, but they really captured the spirit of it. And again, they're not just rehashing riffs that I've heard before. So yeah, look, it's not anything super new or inventive, but to take something that was super old and make it not sound like every other record that's already come out before. And I think not be too slavish in your capturing the intent, rather than trying to be slavish in just aping what was done before, makes it feel fresh and invigorating. And sort of retreating, talking about 2023 being a bit of a difficult sort of year personally. There was a lot of like going back to sounds and things from, when you're younger and those things are a bit comfortable to you. So hearing something that is from, a period where you sort of grew up and stuff that you're into being recreated and done well. There was something that really sort of spoke to me as far as that record goes, and maybe not one that people would think of.
Well, I thought it was a fantastic record, and I remember hearing or doing a react for De Vansen Roep to Mijn Naam on the news rant, and yeah, again, I thought it was good. I think the interesting thing about the women in extreme music is I kind of liken the evolution to what you saw in the UFC. When there was a period of time where Dana openly said there was going to be no women in the UFC, then Ronda Rousey comes in, and then, it was still, there was still a degree of novelty to it. And now, it's just a standard thing, women, you expect on any single UFC card to be at least, 2 to 3 female bouts. Kind of feel in some ways, and, hopefully people won't think I'm ignorant in saying this, but I mean, I think you must tell me if you think I'm wrong. I think there's merit to the theory. I kind of feel like there's almost a similar evolution that's taken place when it comes to women in extreme music. I remember when Angela fronted Arch Enemy, there was a novelty element to it. It was an oddity in a scene that's mostly dominated by men. And she, I think, was judged potentially sometimes quite unfairly, but equally, there was also another extreme where she was so praised just because she was this kind of soul woman doing her thing. I love how women's roles in extreme music has evolved, and the fact that we've really come a very long way from Angela Gosso in Arch Enemy in a relatively short space of time. And I think what's also great is that a lot of the women that are in extreme music now are doing so many different interesting things. It's not just that you have to go in and scream and growl. It's not just that you have to be the bit on the side that's doing the operatic vocals. I think it's kind of got to a point where rather than trying to ape male vocal styles, for example, they can inject real femininity into their performances or into what they're delivering, and actually through doing that present something that's very unique. And I think, I think if we measure it by that criteria, then I think Azagrom really hit it out of the park with Veil of Death Ruptured.
Yeah, and look, I think I would probably agree with a lot of that. And being, yes, they are an all-female band, but it's not really it's not really a selling point. They don't really make a big deal about it. It's just what it is. And you don't get the sense that the musicians are there, can't play their instruments, and are just there for novelty. So you never get that feeling. I think that was the other thing that was pretty refreshing. I mean, look, you can have whatever lineup you want and claim whatever you like, but at the end of the day, what comes out of the speakers is what's important, and whether you do it with conviction and whether it's, people feel like that it's authentic, and you get a bit of a sense when it's not. And I think, they didn't make a big fuss about it, so we don't need to, and I think the results kind of speak for themselves by taking that approach.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, number 9.
So number 9, so now we're going to get into, I've tried to split up, alternate between some of the newer and older stuff. Number 1's the only one that's like definitively the number 1. The rest are just in the top 10.
Yeah.
But I think we'll this will be one that'll be on your list as well. So Dying Fetus, Make Them Beg. What do we have to say? Like, yeah, Dying Fetus is Dying Fetus. But I don't know. They've necessarily done a bad album, and if you want that mix of like old school death metal with like nice slamming hardcore bits to it, Dying Fetus is a staple of the genre. But I think on this album they sounded pretty animated and like they're on a bit of a mission, and that really just reflected the music. It was a lot of fun. Like, just listening to the album felt fun. I'd be driving to training ready to spam 1,000 flying knees and elbows into a bag, and that was kind of the soundtrack to doing it. And if you want a soundtrack for a violence party, that's
a soundtrack for an ass kicking.
It was either that or werewolves, So
yeah. Well, dude, I'm not going to say exactly where they're at on my list, but I don't think it comes as a surprise to anybody that they're pretty high up on the list. I was blown away by this record. I was, I'm absolutely infatuated with it, to be quite honest with you. I think I completely agree with you that I doubt very much there's a bad Dying Fetus record. I discovered this band when they put out Purification Through Violence. I remember Killing on Adrenaline coming out, loving that. Destroy the Opposition, that was a real game changer. I thought that was phenomenal. When they went through their lineup changes, and people were being a little sort of, not sure where the band is going. I think John Gallagher kept the train on the tracks for sure. And then in the last, I'd say, 12 years now, but their last 3 records, Reign Supreme, Wrong One to Fuck With, Make Them Beg for Death, it's probably one of the strongest runs that any veteran death metal band has been on, over the course of the last 2 decades. Reign Supreme is a perfect death metal record. Wrong One to Fuck With takes a lot of the best parts of Reign Supreme and kind of cranks the handle on it and amps it up a little bit. If you were to be very pedantic, you could maybe say Wrong One to Fuck With is a little bit overly long. It's 53 minutes, so for me never gets boring. But I can see how folks might go, well, there's a bit of bloat there. And then Make Them Beg for Death, only 37 minutes long, but every single song hits so unbelievably hard. And I think one of the things that the band has done on this album, that they probably, they've perfected it on this album more so than they've ever done in their careers. Those big Dying Fetus moments, whether it's a break, a beat down, just something that's catchy, every song on this album has that. And the best example is Undulating Carnage, which I mean, I don't know the lyrics, but anyone who's listened to the record, they'll know exactly what part I'm talking about. It's one of the finest moments in death metal in 2023. Just pure barbaric knuckle dragging magic.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd probably be remiss to mention, I really love the cover art for it too.
Yeah,
just fits it really well. The whole package is really well done. So, super great record, and there's probably a few dents in a few heavy bags that are courtesy of Dying Fetus.
Well, it's mind-boggling to me how this band is as popular as they are, because I mean, they truly are they are so in your face and so unrelenting, and it's not like with with a band like, I mean, they're obviously not nearly as popular, but with a band like Infant Annihilator, there's always been something a bit stupid and cartoonish about it. I mean, not least of all that first music video that they put out where they're playing, drums with fucking sticks in the forest and stuff like that. But with Dying Fetus, like there's a slight bit of tongue-in-cheek to what they do, but most of it does feel very serious, which I think is part of why I like it so much. This is like the kind of horror movie that would have been, if they were a horror movie, they would have been, a video nasty back in the day. And it would have been one of those that's probably the last on the list to be unbanned, like Cannibal Holocaust level stuff. But the point that I was making is how they've managed to be that popular. I just don't know. I mean, they're one of the most prolific bands in the death metal scene, but there is absolutely nothing about them at all that should even whiff at being mainstream or being slightly, socially acceptable.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's to do with, they are a fun band. So, and like a lot of that old school death metal too really did, I guess, have a little bit of that humor to it, as much as some people don't always recognize it. But it came out of that sort of, particularly a lot of that sort of surf skate stuff. It wasn't too far removed from even thrash is a bit party. So there was always an element of freewheeling to it, which I think has probably gotten a bit more serious over time. But I think also just blending in those hardcore influences, there's always the backbone is there's a riff there that makes you want to, punch the air sort of thing. So to me, I think that helps them really sort of cut through and sort of connect. And I think it's probably just that mix of elements has helped them sort of stay relevant, throughout their whole career.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, absolutely phenomenal record. There's no other way to describe it. Okay, number 8.
So number 8 is a Czech black metal band called Somniate, and the album is called We Have Proved Death. So what to say about this one? So my understanding is it's a concept album based off sci-fi book in Watermelon Sugar, which the title sounds pretty non-threatening, but it's a bit of a dystopian novel, sci-fi novel. So it is themed around that. But what I really like about the album is there's a lot of variety in it. So there's, particularly in the vocals and the music, there'll be little sort of jazzy interludes thrown in here and there in certain sections, but then they don't sort of overstay their welcome. They're just there to sort of break the flow up, and give you from a listening standpoint something to, I guess, refresh before diving back into sort of the black metal bits of it. Almost like, I guess, another example of it, the Archon and Faustus, the song Whirlwind Journey, where they just stick a breakbeat at the end of it. But that little drum beat right at the end of it makes the whole song, in my opinion, because it just throws a different. He's like, I wasn't expecting that. And
it's a pattern interrupt. You kind of get used to the loop of the riff or the loop of the blast or whatever the case may be, and it's always fun to just have that. And I don't think one should ever overdo it. If you overdo it, it sounds forced. But
Absolutely.
Just to have that one moment that's completely different. That's I'm the same as you. I love those, and for me, they're always the high points on any record.
Yeah, and Cryptops used to do stuff like too, where they put a weird twangy bit in and feel like ding, 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 and then just go back into it. And Somniate, again, they're not overstaying their welcome with it. It'll just be like a little section just to kind of give you that pattern interrupt. And vocally, there's a lot of, I think the vocals on this album are really cool. There will be bits that are a bit more almost into DSBM territory, but not at that pitch that I find really annoying and don't really like. It's pulled back to the level where it actually sounds like someone's, being set on fire, but they're not trying to fight a bunch of ghosts. So it's it stays at the point where I feel like it's effective and has an impact. So just I think for a band to show that level of variety and versatility, and I think it's the second or third album, makes the one an interesting one to watch. So maybe if you haven't paid attention to them, might be a good album to check out and see whether it's a band you want to jump in on or not. But I think they're interesting enough that they're definitely worth a look if people haven't.
Cool. So Somniate, we proved death at number 8. What is your number 7?
So number 7's another old one. Hard choice this year because there were a lot of quality releases from I guess more well established bands. But for this one, I'm going with Suffocation, Hymns from the Apocrypha.
All right.
Now, I think there's a few choices you can make. So obviously, Cryptopsy had released a new record, Cannibal Corpse, Dying Fetus. So it was a pretty good year for death metal and particularly well-established death metal bands. But Suffocation for me have always been between probably Suffocation and Immolation have been my two mainstay death metal bands. And look, probably Cannibal Corpse to an extent too. But been the ones that have always been reliable. I got really into and have always sort of followed the back catalogue. And I guess, again, being a year where it was a bit of a rough year from a personal standpoint. Again, diving back into that stuff, I remember, when you first hear like Pierce from Within, Human Waste, or Despise the Sun, or any of those records where you're just blown away by just the sound that Suffocation used to get, just how there's a reason a lot of bands try and copy them, but I think that no bands really ever come close to really nailing the sound because it's just the individuals that are in that band. And I think particularly the creative drive of like Terrence Hobbs and the way that he plays riffs. Even when you're trying to copy it, you never really get there. So the best you can do is like sort of a pale imitation. But this album was just, I really liked the production. It was nice. It sounded very thick and tough. And I think having seen them with Ricky, I think this was, from what I understand, his sort of debut on an album. And I think the performance he put in was pretty commanding. Like he stamped his authority on it. He doesn't sound too dissimilar from Frank, but I think he also has enough of his own personality where he was able to put his foot on there and shows that he's a more than capable, replacement and a good vocalist in his own right. So I was really just seeing a band that I've always really had a lot of love for. Put out an album that I thought was a strong performance at this sort of point in their careers, and I think I've always got a massive soft spot for anything they do, and I didn't find. It would be easy to slack off, but I don't think they've slacked off. And every time I've seen them live too, that's sort of borne out. The performances are always fantastic. So I just feel like they were really dialed in on this. And again, it was a chance to show off the new members, and I think they all sort of acquitted themselves well. So yeah, whether other people will feel the same, and how much of it is some of my already existing love for them, and them putting out a really good record. I think irrespective of that, it's a solid record, and if you listen to it, you're going to get something out of it either way, whether it's in your top 10 or otherwise. But for me, it just pulled me back to that time where I was really diving into all the albums and having a great time. So it was a nice little bit of, I guess, escapism.
So I love the record as well. I think a couple of points I'd make about it. I think first of all, maybe it's just me, but Frank Mullen is such a character, such a he's such a figure in that band and in death metal generally. Like he to me operates on a similar level. And again, some folks may agree, some may not agree. I've seen him live, and I think this is potentially what has brought me to the point I'm about to make. To me, he's a character in the mold of, or at least on the same level as David Vincent, Glenn Benton. I mean, he's a death metal icon. When you see him live, or at least when you saw him live when he was still playing, there was a presence to the guy and a dynamism to the way that he would, engage the audience that was unique. It was very aggressive, and it was for me, at least as a Suffocation fan, it defined Suffocation. So when he left, naturally I was very apprehensive about what they were going to, be able to do, no matter who the vocalist was. But I will hand it to Ricky Myers. From the second that I heard the first single off of the record, and obviously when I had Terrence on the podcast, a while back, he had mentioned, that Ricky is great. And I'd seen some live clips of Ricky. He certainly looked like he was doing the business. But it's one thing to do the business on stage. It's another thing to be on a record and make the record, or make the transition to a new vocalist, especially a new vocalist replacing somebody as pivotal as Frank, sounds so effortless. So at the age of 49, he turns in one of the finest vocal performances in death metal of the year. And then I think the other aspect of the album that is really stamped down is the realization that, as much as he is the sole remaining member of Suffocation, if you were to go all the way back to the very first records that Suffocation ever did, and you draw a line through, to present day, what you should come to the realization is that Terence Hobbs is a fucking genius, and he has been principally responsible for Suffocation sounding and, being the band that they are. Every single song on that album is, chock full of just nasty, mean riffing. It doesn't lack any of the aggression, any of the fire that, even going back to my favorite Suffocation record, Pierced from Within, that album had. And then on top of that, you have a record that I believe is extremely well produced too. I mean, I think, if I were to highlight something, I'd say, again, one of the finest production jobs of the year. Combined also as an ancillary benefit with one of the nicest bits of artwork that I've seen on an album, in 2023. So for me, it was just it's all round win for the band. The only thing that I would say, and I'd be curious to get your view as a music tycoon yourself, I would not have released it in November. I wouldn't have released it in 2023. If I were Nuclear Blast, I would have said, let's wait until February 2024. You're just sticking it out, in my view, into just way too heavy traffic in 2023. And you risk the album getting buried under that, September surge of old school death metal that came out that, dominated everybody's playlists for, at least a couple of months thereafter, and frankly, including mine. We've spoken about one of them already, Dying Fetus, but I mean, what sort of year is it where Cannibal Corpse, Dying Fetus, and Cryptopsy are released all at virtually the same time? And all three records are fucking superb.
Yeah. Look, I guess from a business standpoint, maybe not the wisest move, but look, I guess the flip side I'll take to it is that given the amount of quality death metal releases that did come out, and we're talking about it in amongst that competition. So the fact that we're still noticing and talking about it, I think is also proof of just what a career that Suffocation have had. And I guess as far as being able to keep up, not only do they keep up, but they're just as good as anything else that's coming out. And I think, look, some of that comes from being, let's say this, and it's probably true of Immolation as well. Those bands are leaders. They don't need to copy anyone else. People try and copy them, not the other way around. And even throughout their having a long career where trends come and go and things become popular and unpopular, they've always been comfortable in who they are and what they do, and they've never needed to, change to suit anyone else. And I think that, their success is reflective of that. So, yeah, on one hand, from a business standpoint, I can see the argument, but I think the fact that we're still talking about it being one of the best albums of the year, and maybe just in my opinion, but there'll be other conversations like that, just shows how good they are.
Mm-hmm. And to your point about Immolation, again, another band who, with Acts of God, in 2022, put out one of the best things they've ever done. And again, you're talking about a discography that is, there aren't really anything close to misses in their discography. So to put out an album of that, of that intensity and that impact at that stage of their career, phenomenal. Same deal with Suffocation. So, okay, good choice. Number 6.
Yep. So the next one is a band called Haradrim, and the record's called Death of Idols. So Swedish band. I think they're a 2-piece. It's I guess crust, black metal crust punk sort of music. So I really like it. It's very dark, very mean. It has a lot of intent, and I think that really carries through particularly in the vocals. The lyrics are very deliberate. The vocals are done very deliberately so that you're meant to understand and hear every word that's being said. I really like that. It takes a lot of effort. I think it's very easy to sort of scream and make noise and make a horrible sound, but it's another thing to almost like pull back enough to dig the knife in where you're supposed to hear everything that's being said, but still keep it in that sort of register. So, and it's just got that sort of Scandinavian darkness to it, but obviously with some of the sort of that energy and that pacing of crust punk. So, it's a good album to listen to if you want to get mean, and it's a more calculated sort of meanness, which is kind of enjoyable, and maybe not necessarily exactly alike, but an album from a previous year I mentioned, Idol of Fear, where there was a bit of tension there. That was very heavy in the tension, and this is a slightly different vibe, being faster and more punky, but like that being able to dial back just to keep things in that sort of uncomfortable place. I think it's channeling a bit of a similar level of control as far as like the aggression, which I really liked. I really appreciate when people can do that.
Excellent. Okay, number 5.
So the next one is Kostnateni, and the record's called Upal. This is a one-man band, but very interesting. From what I understand, it's very, very interesting guitar sound that you don't sort of hear every day. From what I understand, I guess the main guy behind it uses like a fretless guitar, and done a fair bit of study into I guess like Turkic and Asian sort of folk type music, and that's where the sort of weird sounds come from. But it's kind of coupled with a really evil sort of vibe and some pretty nasty sort of vocals as well. So I think if you can find something new and interesting to do, that's always interesting to me. And if it's a bit unusual, I guess being Australian, it's in my DNA to like things that are a bit off. I can't help it. But yeah, that's impressive on its own. But I think when the music's actually really good as well, and you can tell from a composition standpoint, I've seen some interviews with the guy that he knows his stuff as far as music composition goes. So it's all very well thought out. It's a good record and a nice surprise. Again, something I hadn't heard before.
Okay, number 4.
Now we'll get the death metal trifecta here. So it's Cannibal Corpse, Chaos Horrific.
Wow.
Again, another legacy band that's kind of found a second run. And I know in a previous year we'd sort of had this discussion around Cannibal Corpse, and I'd sort of said, look, they're a bit like, I almost call them cheeseburger death metal, and it's not meant as an insult. It's just that like they're such a staple. It's going to be reliable. It's going to be filling. You're never going to get a bad one. It's always going to be of a pretty stable quality. But I've had as much as I need of that. So I go back to Bloodthirst, and I go back to some of those earlier albums as well. And I'm like, that's all the Cannibal Corpse I need. So the newer stuff doesn't really stick with me as much. But this record, they a few magic things. It was like someone made, sriracha mayo and put it on the cheeseburger. And I'm like, this is the best damn cheeseburger I've ever had. And now all I want to do is eat more of it. But I think that the key change is obviously Eric Rutan coming in, I guess, as a member. So he sped them up a bit and they slowed him down a bit. And then between the both of them, it was perfect. So, Hate Eternal, I always sort of jokingly say King of All Kings, the album King of All Kings was a great song. Like, it's just a blur. And I feel like the best moments of Eric's career as far as riffing go, I think he course corrected in later albums, but that album's just like a blur. So the first song's good, and then it's kind of doesn't really change too much. but his best riffing is all those sort of Morbid Angel era stuff. The stuff that sticks with me is, stuff like Caesar's Palace or Where the Slime Lived, where they slow it down and you can, that riff kind of locks in with you. Or even something like God of Emptiness. So it is the slower stuff sometimes that sticks out. Like, he's a great guitarist. He's got a great riffing style. I really like it. But I think it also needs to be tempered with the ability to have some more dynamics and slow down. And I think in sort of joining Cannibal Corpse, it kind of dialed the speed back a bit, but let like the best parts of his riffing, some of the nice dissonant bits and the bits that sound pretty nasty, breathe a bit more. And I think for Cannibal Corpse, it sped their sort of mid pace up a little bit as well, and just kind of gave it a little bit more of a feral energy behind it. And it feels like from a performance standpoint that the band themselves probably felt it. I feel like Corpse Grinder's in pretty fine form, even on Blood Blind, where he's just sort of going subjugate over and over again. That bit like really hits home. So I just feel like they all got together, magic happened, and it just lit a fire under all of them. The record feels like it was fun to make.
Yeah, which again, I think, for a band who've been doing it as long as they have, I mean, they've been around since 1988, and obviously not in the same guise, but I think in order to enjoy yourself the way that they quite clearly did do on this album, I think is saying something. I'm going to backtrack on one bit that you mentioned around Eric Rutan. I would agree with you on King of All Kings, but I actually think, with the exception of Fury and Flames, which I thought was a bit monotonous, I think I Monarch is an incredible Hate Eternal album. And then for me, Phoenix Amongst the Ashes, but particularly Infernus and Upon Desolate Sands, they really knock it out of the park. Those are phenomenal records and really dynamic albums. But I think, potentially folks didn't give them as much time as they needed to because of the fact that, King of All Kings, and to a lesser extent, Fury and Flames is just all about blasting and insanity. I love your description though about he sped them up just enough and they slowed him down just enough, because I think that's a really great way to describe his impact on Chaos Horrific. Cannibal Corpse for me, I'm kind of in the same boat that you are. I've been a fan since the very early days. They've always come, in terms of greatness, they've sort of hit these peaks in their career. One of the peaks to me was The Bleeding. The next one was Bloodthirst. The next one, and the album that has been probably my favorite record, and I think potentially still is my favorite Cannibal Corpse record, The Wretched Spawn. That was 2004. And actually after The Wretched Spawn, they hit a couple more high notes. I thought Evisceration Plague was very, very good. And then, with A Skeletal Domain, Red Before Black, Violence Unimagined, they were all good albums, but they weren't albums that I necessarily felt like returning to again and again. It's as you say, you've eaten the cheeseburger, so okay, I know what it tastes like. I'm gonna go out for a bite if I feel like one, but how often do I feel like one? But for me, I'd say Chaos Horrific is, without a shadow of a doubt, the best record that they've put out since The Wretched Spawn. It's an album where the songs all sound very self-contained. The darkness of Eric's riffing, just kind of permeates the songs a little bit. It just seasons it a little, and that takes everything to the next level. And I do think his presence in the studio, maybe it's because he very storedly drawled the fuck out of them when he was producing their records. I think his mere presence in the studio potentially scares them into delivering their best performances, because the actual performances on the album are second to none. Again, some of the best, maybe career best performances that any man in the band has put to disc.
Yeah, and look, I think having worked with him on the production side for a few albums too, he's pretty familiar with what he's getting into, and I think where he can add to that sound. And look, I actually agree with you on Hate Eternal. I feel like the first album, not the first album, but King of All Kings, he kind of went in as a blur, and post that he did course correct. I agree. Like Monarchs is actually a great album, and you know, some of the later ones as well. So yeah, I was sort of joking on that front. Don't kill me, Eric. But
only criticism I'd have of Hate Eternal, and I've mentioned it on the show before, is for whatever reason, live they just never came together for me. I as much as I love, you know, really most records that they put out, and when I say love, I mean, you know, genuinely love that they 90% is to me. I've been to see them. I've attempted to see them twice, and both times I walked out after 2 songs. I was like, I don't know. I can't hear what they're playing. It's just, you know, this is just a fucking garbled mess. And I mean, the first time especially, I was so bitterly disappointed because I looked forward to it so much. But yeah, for whatever reason, live, it just didn't click. It just didn't work.
Yeah, fair enough. And look, just to cap off the cheeseburger analogy, since we've run with it, and really in line with, you know, what I've said about 2023, it's like you've had enough of the cheeseburger. Okay, you know, and it's there and it's a staple, and you go out and you do all this fine dining, you can eat everywhere. But when times are tough and you're having a bad day, you always go back and reach for it's the staples that you keep going back to. So, you know, I went back to it and it had been improved. So, you know, I can't ask for more than that. And
well, you know, if you have a cheeseburger where the grind is so Hawksmoor here in the UK, they do a grind that's, I think it's 5% bone marrow, and then something like 80% short rib, and the rest is chuck or brisket, and it's dry aged as well. Jesus Christ! I mean you're gonna go very far to have something better. I think it's a short rib chuck grind for Burger and Beyond as well. So another. I mean, I'm not sponsored by them, sadly, but anyone who lives in the UK who visits London, you know, with any degree of frequency, do yourself a favor and go to Burger and Beyond, and then you tell me whether that is not one of the best burgers you've had in your entire life. Just as an aside note, because you got me in the mood for burgers now.
Now I know what I'm having for dinner.
Now, okay, number 3.
Yeah, so number 3, this will be the last one of, I guess, the established bands, and then we'll save the last 2 for some new stuff. Mm-hmm. So number 3 was Marduk Memento Mori.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And this is going to be an easy one for me to explain. Romans 5:12 to me is the best Marduk album, full stop, and that gave me more of that. It was just you could just call it Romans 5:13. It does have its own thing, but I guess the reason that I like that album, I really like the production of Mortis's vocal performance, which I feel is fairly varied. They were more, I guess, from a Marduk standpoint, showed that they could add intricacy into stuff. So you've got things like, having Alan Averill on a song and kind of doing that interplay, or they had weird little bits that would have, maybe a little bit of keyboards or some experimentation or something in there, or differences in pace and tone. And I guess, I'm not really Frontschwein. I wasn't really a big fan of, and Victoria either. So it wasn't really the direction that suited. I'm more interested in the occult stuff that they do, and I feel like this is kind of a return to that. And it's got little bits that are maybe more industrial tinge. There's bits where they've added horns. Not stuff that's not necessarily dissimilar to what you hear on a Funeral Mist record. But
that was exactly going to be my point. The magic of Memento Mori, it lies in the fact that I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but I would not be surprised if, in an interview it is revealed that it was Mortis that wrote the lion's share of the record. It sounds like a Funeral Mist record, which is why it's great. Victoria was a huge letdown, in my opinion. I've spoken about this many times before. Frontschwein, it had its moments. When they do the Blonde Beast live, it's a phenomenal track. It's not a bad album overall, but it paled in comparison to the trinity of just pure genius that was Romans 5:12, Wormwood, and Serpent Sermon. And to me, Memento Mori recaptures that magic, and it also brings in some more of that Funeral Mist evil, and it actually also gives off some of the vibe that you get when you see them live. Particularly the track on Memento Mori. I just need to remind myself of what the song is called. Shovel Beat Scepter. Where they've got the, those weird sounds in the background, those ambient sounds, and Mortus is just yelling. He tends to do that quite a lot when they play live. And the fact that they managed to capture it that well on their record is, again, the phrase that Ralph Schmidt of Ultha uses is chef's kiss. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and again, I think on that record, there's parts where it's very deliberate for you to hear the lyrics. Like they pull the music back, or he's going, has it dawned on you? Is your rat's nest in order? And you're like, he wants you to hear that. So to be able to have the forethought to pull the music and everything else back so that those lyrics can be present and in your face, I think takes like a level of, it just kind of shows the difference, I guess, between people who really understand composition versus people who are just knocking out songs, and there's an intent behind it. And I think maybe if we go back to that, I feel like that trio of albums that you mentioned, sort of starting with Romans 5:12, there's an intent behind it, and I don't necessarily feel the same thing about those war-themed albums sort of in between that. I feel like it's the occult, the more occult stuff that has the conviction and the intent behind it. And not saying, that they don't mean what they do with those albums, but they feel more like their blood's boiling a lot more on those other records. And I think Memento Mori being in that vein, you can just tell that like the interest level's probably a bit higher.
Yeah, I think you are absolutely correct. And again, for us, what is this, album number 15 or album number 16? To put out a record this strong at this stage of your career, I think that's incredibly commendable. I'm going to be curious to see how they translate that to the live show, because the last show that I saw of theirs, I've seen them a few times and mostly enjoyed it. The last one I thought was a little dull, because I don't want to hear a band that's just blasting for an entire show. I want to, it's fine, play the stuff off of Panzer Division and, play the stuff off of, fucking Heaven Shall Burn or whatever the case may be. But, throw in some of the many brilliant tracks that you have where you're slowing things down. They have several of those on this album. Again, which is great because it's not a record that's just blasting craziness. It's a very dynamic record. And they've got loads scattered elsewhere across their discography as well. I mean, Victoria was a load of shit, but it had Silent Night, which is an incredible song. So I'm very happy that it feels to me that Marduk is back.
Yeah, no, totally agree. So if you call it Romans 5:13, I wouldn't have blinked. So it just gave me more of the thing that I really, really liked. So I was on board from the beginning. All
right. Number 2.
Yeah, so number 2 is a solo project from, I believe it's Belgium, Oris Quell. The record's called Thanatos. So it's probably no secret, I'm a big Ruins of Beverest fan. And the best record, there's an answer that people give you, and there's the correct answer. The correct answer is Phallus Semen of a Sheltered Elite.
You're incorrect on that one, unfortunately.
The other answer people will give you is Exuvia. And look, there's people who will tell you that Roots is the best Sepultura record. Can't be helped. I'm just kidding. That record's also good, but I'm like, there's tribal stuff, or there's stuff that feels like it's been left out in the sun too long and is slightly melted. And I'm like, again, I'm Australian. It's in my DNA. You know which way I'm going to go.
Yeah.
So for that reason, that record I really love because it's warped. The guitar tones are all warped. The vibe of it just sounds like someone's taken a vinyl and kept it near a naked flame for way too long. So I love it. And I guess this record channels a very similar sort of vibe where there's a lot of interesting guitar tone going on and sort of those similar sorts of type of riffs that they're using a lot of things like choruses or flanges or phases to make everything kind of sound a bit warped. And in similar vein, it's that sort of deathy, doomy sort of stuff as well. It does have its own vibe, so it's not a straight copy, but I feel like if you really enjoyed that kind of bizarro death doom of Phallus Semen, you'll find a lot to enjoy in this record. It's mining a very similar vein, but it's unique. You don't hear a lot of people do it. So, more people can do it, and I'll have lots of nice records to listen to. So,
cool. All right. Your honorable mentions before we get to your number one.
Yeah, so honorable mentions, I'll keep it relatively short, even though there was a stack of good records. But Dot Ibsguard, the Black Medium Current, I think I messaged you when it came out and said it's the best Pink Floyd record I've heard in ages.
I was very surprised that it wasn't in your top 10, actually, because I know how much you loved it when it came out.
Yeah, look, I think the only thing is, at the end of the day, if you ask me what I sort of prioritize, like stuff that's a bit weird is good, but it's also the meanness. Like, I spend most of my day like twisting people's limbs and throwing punches. So if something's mean and nasty, that combination will win versus just kind of being like, it's very creative and very good. But when I want to go to training and punch or kick something, I'm getting dying fetus out. So that's probably the only reason it didn't make it on. If I want to sort of lie down and read a book or something and kind of just put the headphones on and get lost, then that Dot Ibsguard album is really good. But yeah, in the scale of the things that I go to first, the meaner it is, the more likely it is I'll pick it up.
You will gravitate towards it. All right.
Yeah. The next one is the new Slitter album, the White Heart.
Ah, yes.
Great album. Really enjoyed their previous work as well. I like, the addition of some of the clean vocal parts and things that were on there. It's very sort of bombastic type. Yeah, I think I'll use the word bombastic to describe it, particularly the opening. It kind of sets where it's going to go from there. And very confident. You can see that the work that's been done over the previous albums, and he's okay to kind of push the boat out and try a few different things, but they all seem to pay off. So it was a really enjoyable listen, and probably in another year might have actually been on that top 10.
I'll expand on that one on a later episode. So what I will say, very stolidly, I did mention it at the time. So when the album was first announced, the main man from Slidere, said that it was being put out as a response to the modern black metal that made him sick, and I went on a bit of a tear about it on the news rant. And when I heard the album, I did say, look, if you put out an album this good, I don't think you can say whatever the fuck you want. So it's an incredible record in my opinion. And it really took me by surprise. I mean, I was truly ready to hate it, but it was an excellent album.
Yeah, no, totally agree. So again, different year, and it probably would have been on the list. So
yeah.
And the last one, the only reason it's not on there is because it's an EP, but it was the Hypophrenic EP, which
excellent.
A little bit biased since it's my friends, obviously, but you know what? The way that I described it to people, it's like if you said that record is kind of like Grand Declaration of War without the tactical errors. So there's no slam poetry on there. There's no plastic drum sound. So if they manage to get that record right, that's kind of what it sounds like to me. The vocal performance is as unhinged as the music. Live, fantastic. The only reason is that it's not an album, but hopefully we won't have to wait too long for that. But needless to say, whatever they do next is something that people should pay attention to, I think.
Okay, and that brings us to your number one, your favorite album of 2023. Yeah,
number one probably won't be a surprise to you, but might be a surprise to listeners. So my number one for the year was a band called Sea Mosquito, and the record's called Igatur. I know I'd mentioned them on a previous episode. I may have been cheating since that previous release was an EP. Mm-hmm. So this is their debut album. And look, for a debut album, what you're getting out of it, the album itself is accompanied by like a book, like a story that's quite sort of extensive and very dark and very Lovecraftian in the way that it sort of plays out, and the basis of that story sort of forms a lot of the lyrics and stuff in the record as well. In terms of sonic references, if you look at bands like, I guess Bloodhouse Nord is probably a good reference point. Thorns, Axis of Perdition, so that kind of thing. So it's industrial sort of black metal, I guess would be a way to put it, but not in the way that it sounds like a bad goth nightclub. It's all very nasty and mechanical, not unlike Bloodhouse Nord, and it's a fairly sprawling and expansive album, with a lot of twists and turns, because I guess being a concept album, it does kind of follow that ebb and flow of a story. But it's what I like about it is, for a debut album, given the ambition of it to write an album that is also accompanied by a full story and has a narrative arc, and to try and sort of tackle something that big, that is a big level of ambition for a band to try and pick up and to succeed at it. And in my opinion, really nail it. I think vocally, again, it's very nasty and menacing. Maybe not dissimilar to Mortis in some respects, as far as like just driving that intent. Not necessarily like sound wise, but just that meanness and that sense of menace that comes across. That's a lot to take on, and I think for a band to succeed at it so well on their debut and have none of it really come across as sounding forced or cheesy, or I did, I guess, on the Graveir page, do a bit of a deep dive through Derek Green era Sepultura, and the conclusion I came to there is that they had a lot more talent and skill to work with than the old lineup, but in some ways that caused them problems because they had too many things to work with, whereas the limitations force you to get really good at the tools that you have. But I think the other thing that hurt them to an extent, as far as like being as great as what the potential that was there was, I know Andreas Kisser did some film score work, and I think all the Sepultura albums sort of post, maybe from Nation onwards, are all concept albums, but they're all written almost the way that you write a film score. So there's stuff in there that, from the perspective of listening to a band's album, you don't really want in there. So there's a danger in going cinematic. So if a band at that level and sort of that caliber can't really necessarily pull it off, for a band to pull it off on their first record, that's a pretty big achievement. It hit me in all the right places at all the right times. A band, from UK based, that I think a lot of people probably sleep on because of the name. But I think if they, in big words, but I'll choose them carefully, if they keep up the current trajectory that they've been on based on the EPs and the album, if they can keep up with that level of quality and that trajectory, they could have a career that is just as good as someone like a Bloodhouse Nord. Now, there's a lot of factors in that, and future events could change all of that, and they could go to water on the next album for all we know. But obviously Bloodhouse Nord's got a massive long back catalogue, so it's not really the same comparison. But I guess if you look at the building blocks that are there and what they're trying to pull off and how successful they've been so far, if they can maintain that, it's a big ask. I think they could be actually a big name.
So as people sit there shaking their heads saying, how dare you say that, make that comparison, what is and this we'll have this as a segue into my countdown, what is the track that you would suggest we play off of Igatur to convince people, or to make your case?
Yeah, look, that could be a tough one. I feel like all those tracks are pretty solid, and again, it's like an album that you want to listen to almost in totality. But let's run with the track "Filth, Disorder, Iniquity."
Okay, so that was Filth, Disorder, Iniquity by C. Mosquito off of Igatur. Independent release, I just noticed on Metal Archives, which is very interesting. But yeah, I like the fact that you're standing up for independent releases. Okay, let's dig into mine. So we're going to do, for me, numbers 30 to 21. And I am going to start with a band called Ekrom out of Norway. I was turned on to these guys by my good friend Swatalv of Nocturnal Breed. He had done, I think he'd written some lyrics for them, but sent me some of their stuff to listen to, and I just absolutely fucking loved it. You were talking earlier about finding comfort in in old sounds and stuff that that you used to love as a young blood. And these guys, even though they're both, my understanding is, reasonably young. I think they're actually, no, I take it back. So the vocalist is age unknown, but they do have Tex Terror of Nocturnal Breed playing in the band as well. He's 46 years old, but I think the vocalist is or the main dude that does the guitars, bass, keyboards and stuff. I think he's a bit younger, but I mean, they're a young band relatively speaking, but they really do play Norwegian black metal the way that all of us that got into that scene, know and love. The album is called Uten Nodgest Formeldelze, which again, I'm sure I've absolutely ruined the pronunciation of it. It was put out on Edged Circle Productions on June the 6th. But yeah, it is 8 tracks of incredibly well-written, well-written black metal that, even though this is their debut record, I think also still has some of its own identity as well. It's immediately recognizable as Norwegian, but it doesn't sound like they're trying to rip off Dark Medieval Times or A Blaze in the Northern Sky or anything like that. It sounds like its own thing.
Yeah, I actually missed that one, so I've just made some notes now. I'll go back and revisit that.
Well, yeah, I missed. I was about to say I missed a few of yours too, so I've made notes of it. And what I am going to do this year that I didn't do last year is I will put out a playlist for everybody of everything we're talking about right now, so you can go check it out for yourself. But yeah, Ekrom at number 30, then at number 29, it is Hex Vessel, Polar Veil. I kind of jokingly said it many times. The name Hex Vessel is fucking awesome. My experience of discovering Polar Veil was through the news rant. And as soon as I heard, I think the song was the first single they released was a track called A Cabin in Montana. I was like, okay, this is going to be fucking excellent. And then the rest of the record, absolutely did not disappoint. Fun fact, Matt McNerney of Hex Vessel, he used to be in Code. He also happens to be the vocalist on potentially one of my top 10 songs of all time. There's a song that Code put out on their 2009 album Resplendent Grotesque called I Hold Your Light. And again, I've raved about it on the podcast many times. But just as a side note, easily one of my favorite songs of all time. But yeah, Polar Veil was a bit more black metal influence than the previous Hex Vessel stuff. Not so much that it sounds like Memento Mori, but there was definitely a more of a pronounced black metal influence on it. But all of the other elements of Hex Vessel are very much in place. It's incredibly well-written songs. They do have, as the name suggests, a very kind of cold, stark atmosphere and feel to them. But again, the album is also one that is not shy in kind of, giving you really, really big moments. There's a song called Eternal Meadow, that ends off with this just incredibly catchy and memorable crescendo, where he talks about, I think the lyrics or something to the effect of, if I step within your inner temple, a nocturnal eclipse of ancient wisdom. But it's Matt just singing his fucking heart out, and every single instrument behind him is holding the fort incredibly well too. But yeah, phenomenal album.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting you mentioned the black metal part. So I kind of haven't got around to the record yet, and I had heard that it was kind of dived a bit more towards black metal. So I was keen to understand sort of how much. how much of a lean in it is. Understanding that obviously it's still going to sound like Hex Vessel. I wasn't really expecting it to sort of, go into full on territory. But I also love that Code album as well. Like that's on fairly regular rotation. So I am always keen to see what he does. I think the only time I've really been super disappointed was that first Graves Pleasures record, and that was only from like really loving Beast Milk a lot, and then that record didn't really sound like it, but they picked it up a little bit on the following one. So, yeah, I need to go back and get onto that one. It's on the to-do list, but yeah, the fact that it's on your list means that I should probably hurry that up.
You certainly should do. We get to number 28, Necrofire, Burning Shadows in the Southern Night. That was put out on Season of Mist on the 2nd of June. I had said when that album came out that I felt this was like the album that Necrofire were really going to announce themselves with. Their first album, Prophecies of Eternal Darkness, I enjoyed. I thought that the last track on that record, Plague Requiem, was a really kind of great cliffhanger for them to end off on, because it kind of hinted at what was coming. Like actually the last two tracks, Betrayal of the Queen and Plague Requiem, and they made good on the promise of those two songs with an album that I think still leaned into their influences, but started to kind of come back to something that's more uniquely identifiable as Necrofire. Probably had a lot more of their personality come out, and I think that was actually confirmed when I had Christian on the podcast. And he was talking about the fact that they were more confident this time round. They felt more sort of at ease with being Necrofire than they did on the first record. But I think there are two bands on Season of Mist that kind of went through the same transition this year. One is Necrofire, one is Cloak. May or may not come up later on in the in the conversation, or later on, or on a later episode. But I really do think this is a record that is going to establish Necrofire, and I am very, very excited about what the future holds for them if they continue down this trajectory.
Yeah, so I've actually got a question for you based off that. So obviously you mentioned that you've sort of had Christian on the podcast previously, and for you, I guess, how satisfying is it to I guess have these conversations with bands that you talk to sort of semi-regularly, and when they sort of, you're seeing that trajectory from them, maybe sort of first starting to putting albums out that you think are in that sort of top 10 list and really coming into their own. I guess it's probably pretty satisfying perhaps to sort of see that journey and almost to some extent go on it with them, I guess just through that conversation and understanding where their thoughts are at that time and what their sort of aspirations are in terms of like future records and seeing them get there.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that I've been reflecting on recently, especially as I've been putting this list together, because like I said, there's been Cloak, there's been Necrofire, there's been Drugoth, there's been Trivax, bands that I've spoken to, as they've progressed, and in some cases, I've been getting snippets of music that these folks have been recording as they've been putting it together, and hearing that step up in their game when these new records are coming out or when they're being created. I mean, yeah, it's incredible. I used to kind of joke and say, I was placing bets on, some of these newer bands, like as to who could become the next behemoth, who could become the next big thing, and then I can go, well, they were on my podcast first. That would be a nice kind of it would be an ancillary bonus. It's not obviously the main reason I do it, but it is great to see the evolution in some of these bands and know that I've been there, for the during the journey in some small shape. But there were a lot of bands this year that I think really kind of came into their own. And as we said earlier on, there were established bands that put out some of the best work of their career. There were new bands that were very exciting, but there were also bands that were like second, third albums that, made a statement and were like, okay, we've put out some decent stuff. We've put out stuff that shows a lot of potential. Now we're actually going to put out something that truly lives up to that potential. Okay, so next up at number 27, we've got an Archon, Obiasot Dwibat Petunan or Petuntan. Again, I've definitely fucked up the pronunciation of that. That was put out on Deborah Morty Productions on March the 17th. Again, a news rant react when I heard the first single, which I think was Deliberate Chaos Caused by Violations of the Laws of Nature. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, this album is going to be fucking brilliant. And I mean, it's kind of taking some of that grave miasma style black and death metal, mixing it in with a bit of Nile. There's like little whiffs almost of Septic Flesh in there. But as much as, you know, those bands, or with the exception of Grave Miasma, might be a little more polished, you know, this is filthy. You know, from start to finish, it is a filthy, aggressive record, but it is very, very, very densely layered, and there's a huge amount going on. It's an album that, you know, I would say you need to listen to, you know, 20, 30 times before you've come anywhere close to uncovering every single thing that's going on, you know, under the surface. You know, and it's a really, you know, I think Deborah Morty is starting to kind of develop their own, or there's like a house sound in Deborah Morty, which, you know, comes back probably to the folks that run the label and, you know, who they like and who they like to sign. I think Anarchon is a great example of like the Deborah Morty house sound. Like if you check out a Deborah Morty release, this is kind of the thing you can expect. You know, and I mean that with, you know, as a huge compliment to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned that. I think as far as labels go, there are a few labels out there now where they do have a bit of a sound. Like I Void Hanger is probably another one where I know if a release comes out, it's probably going to be something a bit unique. And they've got a real talent for sort of pulling those bands up. I'd say like Transcending Obscurity as well. Have a sort of vibe, you know, a Transcending Obscurity band's going to have a certain vibe, even if the sound, you know, there's a bit of difference in the sound. There's definitely a feel to it, which is kind of cool. I like it.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I think as a label, you are, you know, you've done well for yourself when your logo becomes a stamp of quality. You know, and it's not every single record that you know, Deborah Morty has put out in 2023 has been a home run in my view, but they're at that place now as a label where when I see them put out something, I'm immediately interested. Like I know there's a better than 70% chance that it's going to be something that's going to be good. So yeah, very, very good record. And we move on then to number 26, Cursebinder. This was the album is called Drifting. Put out by Avant-Garde Music on April the 7th, which incidentally, fun fact, is my dad's birthday. However, my dad would hate the band. However, I like it very, very much. It is, I mean, just top-notch Polish black metal. You know, and as unsurprisingly, there's a couple of other Polish names scattered across my list. Poland had yet another vintage year. You know, and Cursebinder, you know, hailing from Krakow in Poland, you know, put out an album that is just chock full of typically Polish riffs, Polish aggression, no fucking around on any single song, you know, and really great self-contained songs. You know, I'm very big on, I don't really like, unless it's done with some sort of grand concept in mind. I hate when bands put out a record where every song just feels like it bleeds into the next. You know, and Cursebinder, you know, it has more of that vintage feel where, you know, it's like Master of Puppets or like Seasons in the Abyss, where every single song just has its own unique identity. And it's, yeah, fantastic record. Floated under the radar, I think, for a lot of people, because I remember when I played a track by them at the end of a podcast, you know, towards the end of last year, a load of people messaged me like, oh, who's that band? It's great. I'm like, well, you know, you should be paying attention. You know, this album came out back in April.
Yeah, look, I actually enjoyed that Cursebinder record as well, and I agree. I think it did sort of go under the radar a little bit for some people, and I like it was like very modern sounding, but without being like super polished to the point where it's sterile.
Yeah,
I think is a difficult balancing act to try and do, but I actually think a lot of Polish records do tend to have a bit of an urban, gritty sound to them. To be honest, it just seems to be like a characteristic that I find that they have a lot of the time, and no one else really manages it like them. But I thought it was a really good example, and I know the Cursebinder guys are also in Dormant Ordeal, which like another great album I really enjoyed. think that was like a year or two ago. That one came out, but also one that people should check out.
Well, I think what you've just described there is kind of the mark of all of the elite tier Polish bands. You know, they kind of have that Polish grit. You know, that's maybe the way that they should start describing themselves. You know, black metal with Polish grit. Cursebinder has that in spades. You know, and again, we can go down a laundry list of great bands who have it. You know, Ars Magna Umbra is one. Cult Vinder is one. But yeah, Cursebinder certainly didn't let the nation down. At number 25, one we've already discussed, Cannibal Corpse, Chaos Horrific. Probably a little higher up on the list maybe than some folks were expecting. But that is testament to the kind of year that this has been. At number 24, we've got another Polish band, Sodality, with Benediction Part 1. That came out very early in the year, January the 20th on Norma Evangelium Diaboli. 4 tracks that are all, you know, in excess of, I think the shortest track is just under 8 minutes. But this is kind of got that same Polish grit, but with just way more darkness and, you know, some of that kind of avant-garde, atmospheric, or, you know, really kind of off the wall, those sort of off the wall elements that I know you like very, very much, you know, injected into every song. But it's a very ambitious record, and considering this is the second album that they put out, you know, it's a very mature sounding album. You know, and again, absolutely fucking love it. It knocked it out of the park, and the fact that it stuck with me for as long as it did over the course of the year, you know, is also testament to how good it is.
Yeah, no, really good record. And if I'd done a 30, that would have been on there. So I've got a list of the rest, and that's in there. So I had to sort of cull things back. But look, you know, anything that involves Mark of the Devil on vocals, I'm in for. He could read the phone book, and I'd buy it. So just whether it's the Culters, the Ghoul stuff, or you know, any of the other work that he's sort of done, anything he's involved in, I know is going to be pretty dark and evil, and you know, he's really got. I'd find him a really excellent vocalist, to be honest.
I think the name Mark of the Devil is absolutely badass, and I celebrate him for using it. So. All right. Then we count down to number 23. So Cattle Decapitation, Terracite. When they first released the album cover for this, I thought the album cover suggested to me the record was going to sound like a complete load of fucking bollocks. I've been a fan of this band for a very, very long time, you know, going all the way back really to Serve Man. Humanure, great. Karma, Bloody Karma, great. You know, I love Death Atlas and the Anthropocene Extinction in particular. I think the Anthropocene Extinction potentially still is my favorite Cattle Decapitation record, but I just felt like, you know, for whatever reason, maybe, you know, they'd been getting too much mainstream attention, you know, or just too much attention from the Metal Hammer types. Maybe Terracite was the one where they jumped the shark. But I was very, very, very wrong. I mean, this is a record that actually improves on Death Atlas in the sense that it brings back some of the intensity that Death Atlas maybe lost. It has probably Travis Ryan's finest vocal performance, especially with his goblin vocals. But just across the 10 tracks on here, they just absolutely whip it, you know, from start to finish. You know, the concept I could comment on, you know, I do find, you know, like the concept feels a little played out to me when it comes to Cattle Decapitation, but I mean, I kind of ignore that. And again, you know, if the concept is what motivates them to write music that sounds that good, then again, you sing whatever, you can sing about whatever you want. Thoughts on the album?
Yeah, look, it's a funny one because I guess I probably need to take some recommendations on Cattle Decapitation because I've never really been able to click with them for whatever reason. But I know like the response to that record was really good. But what's funny for me, I remember when they first came out and people mentioned, and this is a long time ago. Like I was, you know, I had hair. That was that long ago. I remember downloading getting like a song of theirs at the time through whatever it was at the time when you were a kid. And they're like a very, very sloppy death metal band, just all over the place, just really almost primitive sounding in some ways. And to hear what they sound like now, it's like, how is that even the same band? Like the trajectory they went on was such a steep like change from there to where they are now. And I don't think if you'd listen to the early Cattle Decapitation stuff from like way back when, you know, they might have had a demo or like an EP out to now, you would even recognize it as being the same band.
Well, they were basically just a gore grind band, you know, on Human Jerky and on Homivore. To Serve Man, they started to evolve a little bit, and then, you know, Humanure, I remember, just came out, and it was, you know, it was just a complete left field surprise. You know, all of a sudden there was more melody in there. You know, they started injecting more black metal influence in there. I think that's one of the things that's, you know, potentially counts in Terraside's favor, is the fact that, you know, very clearly the people in this band like them some black metal. And they're not afraid to inject those influences into the band. I think Terraside is probably one of the records where Cattle Decapitation's black metal influences are most pronounced. And it suits their sound extremely well. You know, if you're going to sing about the apocalypse, you need to have something that evokes maybe the cinematic aspect of the apocalypse as well. And they do that extremely well. I would suggest if you are not into the band yet, or if you've yet to click with them, I'd say give the Anthropocene Extinction a listen. And then probably you can try Terraside, and you can try Monolith of Inhumanity as well. Death Atlas is a good record, but you know, when they retire, it's going to be, you know, one of those records that, you know, people see as being, you know, you know, for the completionist. You know, it'll be. I was about to use an Iron Maiden analogy, but I probably actually am not qualified to do that. But maybe from my understanding, it will be like the Somewhere in Time of Cattle Decapitation, whereas this last one is probably more of a Fear of the Dark type record. But yeah, very, very, very good.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. I am keen to sort of understand. Like, I don't know why it is, and maybe it was just that it was maybe too neat and too clean. It could be the same issue they have with maybe the newer Cryptopsy stuff, even though it's really good and I can like objectively see why it's really good. I kind of liked it when they were struggling to play.
How fucking dare you. All right, let's get on to number 22, and for me that was Deformity Adrift by Nightmare. Put out on May the 5th by Total Dissonance Worship. You know, when you talk about ugliness and aggression and violence, this album is basically 31 minutes, 47 seconds of just that. No respite, no slow down, no nothing. It's just dissonance, hints of black metal, and just pummeling. I mean, I don't know if it's 7 or 8 string guitars that they play, but yeah, let's assume 8 string guitar based death metal. It is fucking brilliant. Very single-minded in what it wants to achieve, but it's one of those records that, you know, you finish it off and you feel out of breath.
You know, I think there's been some really good bands coming out doing a lot of that sort of more dissonant technical death metal sort of stuff, whether it's, you know, a band like Altars, obviously. Yeah, and you know, ulcerate bands like that, and yeah, Nightmare is probably another example. It's a style of death metal it is technical, but it's probably avoiding that trap of not having songs that tech death can run into, because it is heavy in the atmosphere as well. And I think that stops it from straying into that realm. But this is just really, really good stuff coming out in that sort of vein. So we're a bit spoiled for choice, to be honest. But
well, when it comes to Nightmare, I said at the time they are the American answer to Ulcerate. And I mean, you know, I don't think you can give a band, when it comes to this style of music, I don't personally think you can give a band a higher compliment. Stare Into Death and Be Still, to me, still is one of the best records. And actually, funnily enough, I would personally say I think what I said at the time about Stare Into Death and Be Still is like, this is a turning point for the scene in some ways. I think the fact you've seen so many bands put out music that's going more in that direction I think proves my point.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that.
Okay, so we are going to wrap up and leave you all gagging for more when I give my last pick of today. At number 21, I think some folks may have expected this album to be higher. I expected it to be higher, but in the calibration, for whatever reason, it went down. Doesn't detract from the fact that the record is great. Just suggests how good I thought 2023 was. But the album, Verminous Serpent, the record's called The Malign Covenant. Anyone knows who Alan Averill is. A black metal vehicle. He put this out on March the 16th. I believe it was released independently. It also features the great Joseph Deegan of Sladir. My understanding was this was kind of like a one or two shot, rehearsal studio type recording. So it kind of has that very cavernous, but also, cavernous but spontaneous vibe to it. A bit of sort of almost stonery doom stuff mixed in with old school black metal. But yeah, what a record. And potentially the first of the Alan Averill records to appear on my list that came out this year.
Yeah, no, that was a good one too, and I think again could have quite easily been on the list if we were both doing a long list. But again, when you've got a lineup of that caliber, I'd almost be surprised if they didn't do something that was, if not on people's list, getting close to being on there, and didn't disappoint on that front. What I do like about this year, I have to say, is that I feel like on the staples we were like quite close, but then on the discovery side of things, we've kind of taken two very different pathways. So I've got a whole list of stuff now that I need to go check out, and I think there's probably a few wild cards on my list as well. But that's like really the joy of doing these type of episodes is to pick up all those things that you missed and have them come through, like from someone whose taste that you put a lot of stock in. So yeah,
well, the thing again, doing these lists, you have to do them in the new year, because there were once again, and it did crop up on my list. There were once again some December surprises. So when people put out lists and stuff in November, again, I get why they do it. I'm sure it generates more clicks than you're going to get all year for anything else that you do. And I understand some folks have access to promos, so do I. But no, you need the time to, in my view, if you're going to take the list seriously, you need the time to do the proper benchmarking and to wait until December 31st, lest anything else has been dropped. Just a comment on Alan. Obviously, been on this podcast a couple of times. A guy who I personally like very, very much, but he has creatively really, really been on a tear, post-COVID. And you could get from how he was talking on his podcast and the conversations I had with him that there was kind of a sense of urgency in him, that, he felt like he had a lot of stuff he needed to get out now while he still had the opportunity to. But, going back to Alchemical Warfare by Dread Sovereign that came out in 2021, that was, I think, in my top 5 of the year when it was released. It's still a record I go back to frequently. Primordial, I may or may not speak about, on another episode. And then Verminous Serpent just kind of adds to it. He's I hope he continues to be this prolific, because musically he's in peak form at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's, I would probably agree, watching that interview and even maybe the title of the new Primordial album sort of suggests there's and maybe it's the thing as you get older too, that you feel like there's that sense of like you have a limited resource there, and you want to enjoy every minute. And, even talking about my health, the health issues with the arthritis, and it's like I can't eat all the things I used to eat all the time, but now knowing that I can't do that, I enjoy them a lot more, and I try and make the most out of what I do. And I think probably from a creative standpoint, it's probably a bit of a case of that. But if it results in that, like, you don't get to choose. You're going to go out at some point. You don't get to choose that, but you get to choose how you go out. And I think that's, there's a lesson in that for people. You could sit there all your life and do nothing and not exercise and not do anything and not achieve anything, you're still going to fall to bits. The wheels will fall off, whether you do nothing or whether you do everything. So the only thing you can really do is choose how.
I think that's the most important part, right? I think a lot of people get that nihilistic view of, well, it doesn't matter what I do, we're all gonna be compost in any case, by a certain age. But I think there's a big difference between, and I've witnessed it firsthand. I've spoken on the podcast before about, my dad struggles with diabetes, the fact that he went blind 3 months after he retired, seeing what diabetes has done to him, and he's, really early 70s. I think he's 72 now. It's fucking horrific to see. And I think just from a personal well-being perspective, a physical well-being perspective, that really hits home the point of, we're all going to end up in the same place. The question is how we end up there. And I know I certainly don't want to go through the same thing. So I think on that poignant note, my friend, we can, as I queue up a Verminous Serpent track, we can wrap it up. It has been great to see you again. And we definitely mustn't leave it 12 months before we do another one of these.
Yeah, totally agree. And likewise. So anytime you want to catch up, the answer is yes, in advance. So.
Awesome. All right, brother. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.
Cheers, Jackie.
Bye-bye.
That was the title track off The Malign Covenant by Verminous Serpent, number 21 in my best albums of 2023 countdown. Big thanks to Nathan of Graveir for joining me and giving me his top 10. And incidentally, I have to hold my hands up here and say that I probably should have paid a bit more attention to Nathan's many recommendations that I check out. See Mosquito. You know, time is a precious commodity in my life, but had I done so, I probably would have included them on my list. Maybe not number one, but I can definitely tell you guys to, or strongly recommend that you check out that record, because it is absolutely exquisite. And this is, frankly, again, why I always get Nathan on the podcast, because the guy's got great taste, and he always comes up with recommendations that I wasn't thinking about at the time. So glad to have had him on. Next week, like I said, we've got Carl Hikara. I neglected to mention earlier in the podcast, but we will also be joined by the Duke of Metal, Dave Berardi. And then for part 3, we are continuing a tradition. Mike Hill of Everything Went Black, Necromaniacs, and of course of the bands Tombs and Scorpion Throne will be joining me for the top 10 countdown, and we will conclude it at that point. So really excited to hear what you guys think. When this is all said and done, I'm going to pull together a Spotify playlist as well that I'll share with all of you. I'm going to try this year and do some more interactive stuff. So yeah, we'll figure out what exactly that looks like. Again, it'll be time dependent, but more playlists, more things to, you know, more just more fun stuff. So look out for that. Right now, of course, I've got Evan Hopper and Michael Sigler joining me for this week's installment of the News Rant. So best I introduce it properly. If you watched the absolutely atrocious sack of shit movie Saltburn, and you heard Sophie Ellis-Bextor singing Murder on the Dance Floor thinking, wow, this song is cool, then you can buy yourself a ticket to Fuck Offsville, because this is my weekly news rant.
A roundabout for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
I just clicked leave meeting. What does that mean?
Means Michael and I are doing this by ourselves. All right. Well, welcome to the first Into the Necrosphere news rant of 2024. And Evan has dragged himself along a mate. Who is... can you introduce Michael for the folks that don't know?
Hello. Yeah. Well, first off, fuck everybody and happy 2024. This is my like best friend and like, you know, sort of.
I thought I thought I was your best friend.
Everyone's my best friend if you're like friends with me. You know, I don't have any half-hearted friends. I only have best friends. All right. So this is one of my best friends. This is Michael Sigler. A lot of people who know me behind the scenes know that Mike and I have been working together pretty much like synonymously, like throughout like the Quell saga. He was there for the very first EP, the very first thing that I ever put together before I moved to Sweden, before Quell was even an actual thing that I wanted to like take seriously. It was like a thought piece that I was like, hey, I'm going to move to Sweden. I want to do something. And Mike was actually the guy who started that. But Mike's not just that. He's a musician. But he's been through everything with me, like from beginning to like all the way up to right now. And we both just recently released a split together, the newest Quell Catacombs split, and so I wanted him to like come along and meet everybody and get introduced to this world, because like, you know, he's been there in spirit the entire time that I've been here. So like I feel like it's long overdue that he gets his chance to meet everybody and shine here on this podcast.
Yeah, and we were talking before I hit record about the split, and like I said to you, I feel like as I've gotten to know you, and obviously I've been following your progress as a musician and listen to all the stuff that you've put out, I really do feel like you have a masterpiece in you. And I think that like it feels to me like with every release you get closer towards reaching that point where it's like, okay, this is completely unassailable and undeniable. And this track, and we'll play it at the end of the show, but this track that you've released on the split, Ergotism, dude, it is absolutely sensational. Fantastic. I think this is the
I mean, I would go as far as to say it's probably the best song I think you've ever written.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I have to say though, I mean, really do have to like make this evident that like Mike is somebody who helped make that song. So that song in particular, Ergotism, like it was actually what's a really interesting like connecting line between Mike and I was that was the song that brought us together in the first place. So a long time ago, I had written pretty much the riffs of that song. And it had a different name at the time, and I was doing something with it. And I went into Mike was like living in this house out in California where I was living out, and like we got together. He was doing project that he had is this awesome band called Portraits at the time, and I was like, I want to record this song. We actually I think we even recorded like the vocals in like a closet in his like bedroom, and we recorded that song, the one that's now Arrogantism, but it kind of just like set by the wayside and like just kind of went into the nether, and then him and I reunited when I went out to when I was going out to Sweden, and then we started like a different like friendship, like a more like musical like professional friendship. We started working together with this, and then Mike actually helped with. Mike is the one who did all the mixing and mastering on the last Quell album, like the all it was and will never be. So when we started talking and working together on this one, I was like, man, we got to like go back to that old song, and do this again. And
so how old is this song? Like as far as the
7 years. 7 years.
Jesus. Okay.
Yeah. And so I want you to like, one thing that I want to make evidence, like, yeah, it's definitely something that I wrote, and I do appreciate all the praise. I do believe also I have a masterpiece in me as well. But Mike is somebody I love working with, and why I want him on here is because like he's somebody who's really good at like picking out all that. So like we took that old song and turned it into Ergotism, and he was the one that actually like took a lot of those old riffs and actually did like, hey, why don't we like play it this way? Why don't we move things around and look at this song in a different manner? And he does that a lot. And the only reason I'm singing his praise right now is because I feel like he's somebody that really understands. Like you said, like you feel like you have a masterpiece in me, and I do feel that way. Without trying to be egotistical, I do feel that way as well. But Mike's really good at listening to like music and finding all that kind of stuff, and that's how we kind of ended up working together, and why we continue to work together.
And just so I understand, so Catacombs, that's your band, Mike?
Yeah, Catacombs is just my solo project. Just to kind of like
which is also excellent, by the way.
I'm sorry.
Which is also excellent, by the way.
Oh, thank you, appreciate it. Just to like add to the lore of like Quell, is like Catacombs is my solo thing, basically the same thing as Quell, like both started at the same time. So like when Ergotism, when he first showed it to me and it was a different name and stuff, that was like at the same time that I started doing Catacombs too. And it's just kind of full circle stuff. Yeah.
Well, like I said, we'll listen to those tracks, or we'll play those tracks at the end of the podcast. But I really, really, really good stuff. It's interesting that you said it's like one of the earlier songs that you've written. I mean, how much of a how much of a rework was done on Ergotism, in terms of what it was like or what it sounded like in its original guise versus what it sounds like in or sounded like when you dropped it in December 2023.
Well, so I can like tell you like the whole thing about Ergotism. So Ergotism started off as when I was living in California, I was in this band, Left for Dead, and that was like a band that I was fronting. It was not the hardcore punk band called Left for Dead, but a metal band. And we had like a lot of like good guys out there in like the Central Coast, and we were all like kind of working together and playing music. We met Mike because Mike was in this band called Portraits, and we all started, there's a big scene out there in the Central Coast for a little while. Some of those bands, I think, like Merc Rider and other bands that kind of came out of that scene. And so there's a big little scene that was going on for like a time out there in the Central Coast. And I was sitting on, the porch of like this like tiny little like studio house that I was sharing with this girl that I dated at the time. And we were having like just a bad time, man. I was sitting out there and I was playing guitar, and this song that became Ergotism literally was like a song. It's like one of the only ones in like the lexicon that like just kind of came. I was just sitting there playing on the stoop and then playing a riff, and then I just knew what the next riff was going to be, and the next riff was going to be, and the next riff was going to be. And I ended up like making like I think it was like a recorded, I think it was like 2 minutes and 30-second long song. And I had it, and it was really fun to play. And especially for like guitar players, it's like a really fun song to play because it's riffy. But it didn't have any structure to it whatsoever. And it just kind of like always kind of lacked. And I even talked to, our friend Matt from Exhumed, and he heard the song a long time ago, and he said the same thing as well. It was like it just doesn't have like, it's just too the original version of Ergotism was just way too notey and riffy.
Yeah,
really fun.
I would
really
consider it like it was a super progressive like song at the time for the original version, because like the first riff that started out at the time like was fucking dope, and then you wrote the song in this is like ascending arc the entire way until like the end. So like each part like tied into itself like really well and stuff. The original version of the song was really dope,
but it like didn't create any sort of dynamic. And that's like where Mike really thrives a lot, is like when it comes to like making songs, it's like understanding what I'm learning too. And it sounds crazy to say this. I mean, I've been playing guitar and playing music for 20 years now, 21 years now. I just turned 36. So like, yeah, it's been 21 years now I've been playing music, and I'm just now sort of understanding song structure in a way, which is interesting because like, I mean, you and I, Jackie, like we listen to music and we understand why we like the stuff that we like. But then when you go to create it, sometimes at least for me, like when I go to create, I just like delve like way too heavy into all the things that I like, instead of like bringing it back and like, you know, and like enjoying nuance or something like that. You know, maybe there's moments. What's really great about being a solo artist with someone like Mike in my pocket is the fact that like I can bounce an idea off of somebody else, you know, as a I don't want to be so like, you know, like isolated from like, you know, what is contemporary and everything, that like it becomes too abstract, you know, and that's what the original version of that song was. And like what you hear now is someone listening to it objectively, taking the riffs, moving them around, and like, hey, how about we try this way, you know? And that's like that's a really interesting like process to go through, especially over like 7 years too, which is like insane too. Like we didn't even think like this was ever going to happen again, but we just started working together so much. And like this riff is like, when you're like also like, you know, I mean, a lot of like the musician types that like listen to this like will understand this. It's like you have this riff, man. There's like a lot. I have like maybe 3 or 4 that I still haven't been able to like connect into a song. Like I've been holding on to them for so long, and there's a reason I don't. And those things are like really fun when you finally like open that up, and like someone's like, "Hey, do this," and you're like, "Fuck, that's like the thing that I was like missing this whole time." It's like, oh, just instead of like doing this and this and this, cut these apart, take this one and put it right here, and then you're like, "Oh shit." Now the song works. And it's like it just takes somebody else to like listen to it, and then, but who has a good ear. And that's why Mike and I have been working together for so long, because he helps me with that.
It's like you lay the you're the ideas man, he's the danger man. It's like Ishan and Samoth.
That's a way to put it.
I'd be great with that. Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Well, I mean, that's like if you think about the dynamic with Ishan and Samoth, I mean, that literally is it. Like if you when you removed Samoth from the equation, you got Prometheus, which was trash in my opinion.
Right.
You know, when he's there, he's the guy that kind of reins in some of those more progressive tendencies and some of those more in Ishan's case, I think quite self-indulgent creative tendencies, you know, sure. And he kind of brings it back to, okay, well, let's make it gritty, let's make it aggressive, and that's how you end up with a masterpiece like Anthems to the Welcome at Dusk. So it's a great dynamic to have with somebody, and man, I'm looking forward to what you evolve this into. I do feel, ironically, since you and I met and I thought you were a black metal man down to the very last fiber of your being. But yeah, you kind of have your voice more in this kind of death metal. What I liked about this song in particular was you kind of had these little industrial elements in there. You've got like, you still got the blackened stuff, but it's really like aggressive. There's a real aggressive death metal vein to it as well.
Sure.
So yeah, it ticks many, many boxes. One quick thing. When are your bros in Merc Rider going to put out another album? Because you reminded me of them now when you mentioned them. That Exile of Shadows record that they put out back in 2019 was fucking sensational.
Well, I think actually Mike could speak more on this. Like, so what's his name that works over there at the record shop in Slow? The drummer.
Yeah,
Ralph.
his name's escaping me right now.
Is it Ralph?
Ralph, yeah, probably.
Yeah, Used to do Slow Brew. So I think him and Derek are still working together. But Derek lives. I think Derek lives out of California now. I think he's up in Oregon or Seattle or Washington. I'm not sure. I know he I'm not gonna speak for the man, but I know he started. Derek of Merc Rider started to like get really into his art because he's a pretty good artist, and so. I don't know. I think he might have fallen. Like I know he's musically he's passionate, but I don't know if he's doing anything as far as Merc Rider is concerned right now. But
well, I think if you move to Oregon, you've given up on life. So I think if anything, you should be showing concern for your friend.
I think he'll be all right. He was one of those dudes that like before like all that shit was popular, he was like one of those guys that was already kind of into that lifestyle. So I think he'll be fine. But like I don't know.
Trying to create his very own Chaz in before.
I mean, like hippies before there were hippies, right? Like people who like Derek is one of those dudes who's like just sort of like on a different like. If you ever met that guy, like we met that guy, like, he was just sort of like when you meet him, like he's already on like a different trip that like no one else is on. And he's a cool dude to know. Cause like you go talk to the guy and he's like, we had okay, here's a great example of what Derek, is it Derek Schultz or I can't remember his
Derek
last name.
Schultz, yeah.
Yeah, Derek Schultz. We played a show at this place called Top of the World. Sigler will like, attest what this is. There's a place on the 101 through California, and it's called The Grade. It's in the Central Coast. And if you get off on the Grade, there's a winding path that you can take, and it goes up all these, like if you have like a regular like Honda Civic, like you're not making it, man. But you get up this road, you get all the way to the top, and you get on top of this like mesa, and you're looking all the way towards like Morro Bay and San Simeon, and like all the way down there, and you're looking at the ocean, right? We were like playing like a show up there, right? And this guy, he comes out, and before their band plays, like he had a conch shell, and he just like blew into the conch shell. And blew into it, and then it's just like a different trip. Like there's some people out there doing music, and I don't think they even care about like the accolades that they get from Metal Storm or like this guys out there that just want to do some like artistic stuff. Like it's crazy. Like some of the shows that like we've been to out there, just on Top of the World and stuff like that. Like you'd never see a show like that ever from anybody. Like
it was amazing to see those shows up there because you're literally on top of a mountain seeing the coastline and everything, and then you just got these epic metal bands just playing. Like it was really the fog like rolls in like from the ocean. Like you can see the ocean on a clear day, and then the fog will roll in, and all you will see is like just like the little peaks of like the hilltops, and this fog will roll in, and it just gets dark as shit. But you still don't have any like clouds above you because you're so high, so you can still see the stars. And like this, and there's people with generators and cars and trucks up there that are just like having a metal show. It's wild, man. And like that's the kind of stuff that like Merc Rider used to do. So I don't think they do like music more like it's more artistic for them. They just like pop up, do the thing, and just dip out.
I will strongly recommend to anybody listening to this that hasn't heard the record yet, do yourself a favor and listen to Exile of Shadows. It's basically, I think at the time I described it as High on Fire doing black metal. It's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
And now you've got me in the mood to listen to it again. Right, let's jump into the latest headlines on Metal Storm, and we're going to start with a band that looks right up Evans Street, Infected Rain. It says here, as part of their upcoming 6th full-length offering Time, due out on February 9th, Infected Rain present a Vadim Ojog-directed music video for their new single, Vivarium.
She looks like the Predator.
Yeah,
She kind of does, actually. She looks like the Predator as created on Prey.
What was the one? Oh, the other one with the underneath the ice, and like the Predator gives the girl like the spear and the shield.
I can't remember the name of that one, but I
blocked that out of my mind because the only true Predators are Predators 1, 2, and I'm happy to accept Predators as part of the franchise too.
That one had Lance. That one had Lance Hendrickson in, and he played Wayland Corp. Like he was like
it. That was the time. That was Marie in, and I still wouldn't give a fuck.
Whatever. All right, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Listen to this. Right. Your thoughts, Michael. Okay. Let's start with Michael, because I can tell he's invigorated by what he just heard.
Yeah.
Invigorated? All right. I'm not gonna get canceled on this, am I?
No.
Just go ahead.
I mean, as long as you don't call her, horrible names.
That was good. I mean, my first impression though, the intro riff, and just kind of stale. And then I'm almost feeling like just kind of trying to be like Ginger vibes a little bit.
Yeah, I got that too. I also got like that it was just it's like it's only lows and highs. There's no mids in this thing. It's like all you're feeling right now, like on a mix level, is like you're just feeling like boom, 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 like all the low, and then just all that when she comes in with the shrills. Like it's not really mixed very nicely. I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, she's got a good voice. Like that was really dope to hear that. For me, like I'm a guitar player first and foremost. It's like hearing those kind of riffs. I'm like that first intro riff just made me just reflect back to early 2010s to 2015s. Like that's something a lot of bands have replicated way too much.
Well, you know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like to me Emure. That's an Emure riff.
Yeah.
I bet you can go back to like the first 4 Emure albums. You'll find 3 songs that sound like that. Right. But I mean,
Emure played with this. Man, we played this show. We played this show one time way back in the day. It was them, Despise the Icon, and Emure, and like that was like the era of like those like 2 vocalists on stage.
Yeah,
and I fucking hate that shit so much.
Really? I love it, dude. I think two vocalists on stage is awesome.
2 dudes who don't do anything else, then they can go fucking kick rocks. Like 2 vocalists is fine. Like the guy who plays guitar,
like you just got dudes just hanging around on stage for no good reason.
I don't want like that's like hip hop stuff, and that's fine. I like it, but I don't want it on metal. Like metal's supposed to be balls to the wall. You got 2 guys, if they're taking up space on the stage, which they always are because they don't know where to to put themselves and their feet, like, then get off the stage. Like Greg, okay, Greg from like Dillinger. When the band is like, just doing more than Greg can do, he just jumps out into the stage and kicks your ass, right? He just like starts moshing. Like that's like what
like the mall show, dude.
Yeah,
You ever seen the video clip of that? He just runs across the entire crowd.
We were there, like out here in the yeah. It's like that to me. Like that's like the double. I don't know. It works well in theatrical, like Therion style, like music. Like, when you go to see Therion, you see like an orchestra, like, or Nightwish, and those guys. That's like the aesthetic. But like hardcore music, I don't know. They do it at This Is Hardcore too in Philly. Like there's a lot of these like hardcore punk rock bands now, and it's like two dudes, and they're both like, but it's like two dudes doing that.
I'll tell you why.
Well, so
I'm more from the hardcore side of the world, and it's just because one guy can't do a certain sound like the other guy can. That's most of the reason why.
I will definitely say I think the two dudes from Despised Icon are awesome. Like I think their stage vibe, everything about that band to me is great. I would
agree too. Despised Icon having two vocalists in that vein of like heavy music, their sound, and it being a very heavy death metal-y, deathcore kind of sound, they're the best ones that have done it in the last like 20 years.
Cool. Other thing that I'll say before we listen to before we take in another 60 seconds of that track, it's a guilty pleasure of mine. I'm not the biggest fan of Ymir. However, they've got one particular song that I really, really like, and it's the song they got a ton of shit over. I mean, it was incredibly disrespectful thing to write and put out at the time that they put it out, but I don't give a shit because the song is fucking cool. The first track on Eternal Enemies, a song called Bring a Gun to School, fucking one of the coldest, sickest things I've ever heard in my life, but I don't know why. I just love it. I think it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway.
Like Frankie Palomeri, like him and the people that he works with over the years for all those albums and stuff, like they've gotten some really sick stuff like compiled and put out, like especially like that song you're talking about. Another one that sticks out in my mind is back when they had the beef with the Acacia Strain for like a little bit, and they put out what is that song called? It's like R2 Deep Throat or something like that.
Oh yeah. Well, that's
funniest freaking song I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. That dude from the Acacia Strain, though, the front man, he beat the fuck out of Frankie.
Oh yeah,
he's a big dude. I remember seeing Acacia Strain live, and I was like,
he's way over. He's like 6'5", 6'7" or something.
This is a beast. Anyway, right. I can see Evans getting antsy. So let's hear what Lady Ymir sounds like. Okay, no, it's getting worse now. I one of the things that I do quite like about where the scene is going, I think it's cool that cool that women in metal are starting to become more than just like an operatic singer like you had with Nightwish. Like there's a lot of variation now in like the female presence, and a lot of it to me, at least some of it, is very, very interesting. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Johnny the Boy as an example. I think what I don't know how big of a fan you were of that, or either of you were of that record that they put out, but I think what Belinda did on that is phenomenal. So I like that there's some variation to female presence in heavy music. That's maybe just not the kind of thing that I'm all that interested in. So all right, let's move on to the next track.
There's a really cool, like, there, by the way, like when it comes to like punk music, there's like a really cool Japanese band right now. They're called like Mikoti Beaver or something Beaver. They're like a fucking it's all Japanese girls. They're like touring the United States right now. Well, they will be in spring. I think it's called Mikioti Beaver, something like that. But they're fucking fantastic. They're like all like not geisha'd out, but like just like proper, like they have like that look of a Japanese girl, but they play like this Dillinger Escape Plan esque punk rock music, and it's so fucking amazing. But they're all like, they're really really good at their music. Like, they're really like, I don't know. Uh, it's it's called Mikaboki Beaver, something Beaver. I can't remember what it's called, but they're
You sure
so
that's not the
fucking.
name of the file that you uncovered on Pornhub
No,
when you
no,
were looking for baby metal
no.
videos?
Beaver Japanese band. They're so good right now. They're what what the hell is it?
By the way, whilst you rack your brain about that, there's a you mentioned Greg from Dillinger Escape Plan. That Mirror Cell solo record that he put out in 2022 that is fantastic. There's a song on there called "We," which is just absolute, as Ralph Schmidt would say, chef's kiss. All right.
I saw they're doing the reissue of that Dillinger album too. I'm looking forward to that as well.
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, they're playing a show, I think, with the original vocalist, which I thought was very interesting.
Soon, yeah,
with Dimitri. Yeah.
All right, I think this may potentially be another female-fronted band. So Ponte del Diavolo, they're putting out a new single called Covenant. It says here, Covenant, the second single from Ponte del Diavolo's oncoming studio record, Fire Blades from the Tomb, is out now and available for streaming. Looks like it is a Season of Mist song, so I'm curious to hear what this sounds like. Thoughts?
Nah, like it was too much build up. It should have been a bigger release.
yeah. Kind of lasted a little too long. The
Yeah,
part's
long-
dope.
You guys are both wrong,
Loses you after
and you're
20
also
seconds.
No,
misogynists for not liking
no,
it.
no.
I love
blue,
it.
That's blue balls for like, what? No, like you just
No, I've got to say, I fucking love it. I think it's I really like that. I actually like the build up, but what I liked was, and I don't know whether you were getting it on your on or you getting it through the stream. There's quite a lot going on under the sort of main riff. There's like this very sort of subtle keyboard sound that goes in, and these slight variations to the drums. Yeah, it's just 90 seconds in, but I
mean,
actually really enjoyed that.
First listen. Okay, first off, it's like just the first listen, and I don't know this band, and I don't want to disparage this band, but the riff's it's already like a descending riff, so it's like, it's going like negative, and then instead, and then it draws on for like more than it should. It's already like 4 bars deep, and then the next one should like be like something that like introduces like a change in the song, but it just like it's just like a slight variation. It's a good riff. I think it's a cool riff. I really do. But it was like, if I'm gonna like if you're gonna have me like head banging in the front row of this band, like, I'm gonna have to like, want to like get into like what they're gonna like take me towards, and what they did like just wasn't that interesting. It wasn't that it's a bad thing. I mean, but I think there's potential for that thing, but they should just like, you know, if you can capture someone's attention, like next thing should be like just like a drop.
Yeah.
Silence, and then just be like, like, and then just throw that slammer, like, you know, stoner, but just have that little space. Would it like create so much more and make that song like way cooler?
I wouldn't have slowed down the rhythm, but maybe what I would have done is, because they have like a very like slight variation or a very slight drop. I would have had probably like a thicker sort of wall of sound vibe coming in, and you know, you can keep the same groove, you can keep the same sort of melodic structure,
more texture.
but now you've got way perfect wording, way more texture that's like, you know, just beefing it up.
Yeah.
However,
texture. Yeah, it's Mike.
Oh yeah,
I
feel speak the texture.
I feel like with this band, I don't know them either. It's a first listen to.
Yeah.
The intro is sick. Like on a side note, like Evans made me appreciate and love a lot more black metal, blackened stuff, and things in that realm and whatnot. But like the thing I would say on this is it needs texture. That whole entire riff is sick. Goes on way too long. I guess it's more in terms of songwriting. Like if they had that same feel going, but then change it up here and there, give more variety and texture with extra leads or soundscapes on top, something like that. You know, that's what, because if you lose the listener in the first 20 seconds of your song, it's not going to be a good song.
It's done.
Yeah.
I like I said, I'm erring on the side of liking it. Let's hear let's give it another 60 seconds or so, and let's hear what happens next.
So they're just riding like it's a good song, but they're just like riding on like a central chord. Like it's too
structured.
It's very predictable, but it's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. I like it too. I like it a lot. I like
it a lot too. Yeah, but like what? It's just
more texture and just extra stuff going on. Like that lead that came in, like when we were just listening to that last little section, like that lead should have probably came in a lot sooner, along with the vocals in a good structured way.
Yeah.
Well, I think
having that super long like intro to it, like anyway, yeah.
I think the operative word definitely is texture, but I do like that. I like that quite a lot, and I think it'd be. I'm curious to hear what the rest of the record sounds like. This is their debut, by the way, so the reason none of us know who they've been around since 2020. So a COVID band potentially. They did an EP in 2020 called Mystery of Mystery. They're from Italy, and then they did 2 more EPs in 2022, and then this is on their first record. But I'm definitely, I've heard enough to make me curious as to what the rest of it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, next up we've got Gates to Hell. They've signed with Nuclear Blast Records, another band that I've not heard of before. It says here, Louisville, Kentucky-based metalcore/deathcore operatives Gates to Hell have signed a new contract with Nuclear Blast. Concurrently, they've released a brand new single called Resurrected. Gates to Hell commented, "We're very happy to announce we've signed to Nuclear Blast. The new song Resurrected is out now, along with a music video by Eric Easterday." Blah, blah, blah. One thing I'll say about Nuclear Blast that I appreciate is that they
when towards the back end of when Marcus Steiger was still in charge, they weren't really signing a lot of new bands, unless it was some like German power metal band or some fucking Finnish,
Like
melodic
there was
band.
like that whole like Dimmu Borgir was like the last like Norwegian metal thing, and then Nuclear Blast like definitely went into like just like right, like Creator and like all the like the German thrash and like that's
they
all
were just
did for like
there
ever,
was no
and power
they
metal and
used
shit
to be
like
a label that was innovative, and they brought out new stuff all the time. And I remember how excited I used to get anytime a Death Is Just the Beginning compilation came out, because you were always going to discover like new stuff on there.
I have a couple of those CDs still like in my CD booklet. Like they used to be cool, but like they just like went weird and Earache did the same thing too, I suppose.
Well, I mean, Earache is far worse. I mean, Earache is just a fucking joke as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
of course they are, right?
I'm not even going to try and sugarcoat that. But the anyway, what I do like is though some of these new bands they're signing is actually pretty good. I like Fuming Mouth very much. Not heard Gates to Hell before, but keen to hear them. I have heard rumors that Marcus's new venture, Atomic Fire, I believe may potentially be no more. I can't confirm that for sure, but I have heard a rumor that
do you know any of these bands, Mike? Do you know any of these bands? Because I don't know any of these.
Well, Atomic Fire was the label that Marcus Steiger went and created after Nuclear Blast, and I'm just looking at the website. It's still there, but I've heard that there's either financial troubles or that there's potentially they're fast approaching the end of the road. But anyway, that's that aside. Let's hear what Gates to Hell sounds like. I thought that
so they're just like they're playing every riff they've ever written. They're like slamming them all together, but they did like really cool transitions. That shit's cool. Yeah, that's cool.
That's a good way to describe it. I thought that really one blast early on was a little superfluous. But that like caveman groove that got going there early on, I fucking love that.
And the trend that they're doing like they're very good at doing the Suffo like cannibal like chun 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 like they're solid. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
it's really
I
cool.
can see why they signed them.
Yeah,
right off the bat, like those drums, that's like Florida death metal sound. Right, and like awesome. The whole vibe too was really slammy. So like, man, that was really good.
That was good. What are they called?
Gates to Hell.
Gates to Hell. Good. Yeah, you guys, awesome. Yeah. Good job. Yeah. But I would say like just don't blow your load on the first song. Like take your time. Like, that's what I would say. But like, yeah, fucking good on you.
Yeah, it's funny. Like we've heard two extremes, right? So on one hand, you've had a band that like sort of chew on the same riff for 60 seconds.
Well, look at
the other. Like, we've had a band that's probably shoved in about 5 or 6 different riffs into 60 seconds.
Scroll down on the screen though. Like look at them real quick. Like look at them. Look how they're just like all of those guys. They need to like I don't know. They're just so tense. Like let loose, like just take your time on a riff, chill out.
It's typical. Like I feel like in this kind of band of music, it
sucks.
They gotta kind of scram or squeeze in and squeeze a bunch of stuff in. you know, I get what they're trying to do. And it's definitely very kind of unique. And I can see why they have like the praise and what they got. But yeah.
All right.
Down. Yeah.
Well, like I said, let's hear another 60 seconds.
Fuck yeah.
From where I was slain, shall be your new grave as I drag your corpse through the gates.
I love a well-timed, well-placed, well-executed voice noise.
I guess it's just confusing what direction they want to go, but they're very good musicians. I like it. Whatever they're doing, I like. You know, I'm into it. Yeah. But I don't know what they want.
No, I'm liking it as well. I think that's probably a nice segue into us giving the new Deicide a listen. I'm not going to wait until we find it on there. I'm just going to jump onto my own YouTube and let's give this a quick listen. Just one thing that I will say when it comes to bands like Gates to Hell, maybe it's unfair to say, but if I were a band in that style, it would hurt me knowing I could never be as great as Dying Fetus, especially not after the last Dying Fetus record. Like the greatest thing that could ever be done in that style of music has already been done, and it's the entire Dying Fetus discography.
Yeah, I'd have to agree on that.
Dude, that last Dying Fetus album is... I completely wore it out when I was on holiday. It is so fucking cool. I just can't get enough of it.
Is Gates to Hell trying to be the new Dying Fetus?
No, but it's the,
a lot of bands are trying to be like the new
Dying
dabble. Fetus, because like the whole slamcore kind of sound with that is coming like into fruition right now and being really popular.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I mean, okay, but I mean, I guess anything that doesn't just do Dying Fetus like can't be Dying Fetus, right? Because if they try to do any like, throw black metal into it, like you start like getting back into like Immolation or something like that. Like, you can't really like get like the Dying.
No, I'm not banging on them about it either. It's as much a means just to remind everyone that the new Dying Fetus fucking rips than anything else. But yeah,
so what's up with this Deicide shit? Is there something I need to know about this? Because I'm actually a little bit like outside of what's going on.
You didn't know that Deicide dropped a single on Christmas Eve?
No.
I wasn't aware either.
So, well, prepare to be dazzled. Hold on, we'll listen to it in a second. Okay. Yeah, so Deicide dropped their new single "Bury the Cross with Your Christ" on. I don't actually even think it was Christmas Eve; it was Christmas Day.
Who's on? It's Glenn and Steve, right?
And then Glenn and Steve, and then they have got, I think, Kevin, who was playing with the band for a while. Kevin Querion. So he's been with the band since I think 2011. Since 2008.
Since Santiago.
And then Taylor Nordberg, formerly of Inhuman Condition. He was with the Rib Spreader, a bunch of bands. He's with the band now after Chris left.
Okay.
So there you go. I've heard the song many times. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. I've heard some interesting first responses to this from some of my associates, including our
Deicide. Glenn Benton singing this. Steve and Glenn wrote it. I want to hear it.
Yeah. I mean, Steve and Glenn wrote Steve, I should say, wrote pretty much everything good that the band ever did.
I want to hear it. Let's go.
All right. All right.
I wouldn't.
Thoughts?
I wouldn't have done it, but
What, release a song on Christmas Day?
any of it. I wouldn't have done any of it. But I wouldn't have done any of that. I wouldn't have done any of that. No.
Michael, your thoughts?
Well,
Okay, let's just level set here. Are either of you two avowed Deicide fans?
I have never been a Deicide fan. I appreciate them, but they're not the music that I listen to on any given day.
Okay.
I would say my allegiance is towards like the beginning of their career, like
Yeah.
Scars. Yeah, Once Upon the Cross is something that I was introduced to when I was like younger. At the same time, I was introduced to like bands like Morbid Angel as well. So I have an affinity towards that older, and I've seen them back in that day. But I would never like. No, I mean, I like Glenn Benton. I'm a big fan of Deicide, but that's silly. That's a silly song. That's a silly
Okay, so
song.
what about
song.
it? What about it do you think is silly?
It's silly because like first off, the music videos cut like slides on like a introduction to like a video game when they're like trying to like sell you like downloadable content for like the new Walking Dead. Like, it's just like a silhouette of a guy like with this, and then they just like do like a blood splatter like and then like this another silhouette of a guy, and then he's like slap. Like that video probably cost them like $8,000 to make, and then the songs it's like just gay. It's not sorry. It's lame. It's lame. It's just driving song blam 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 blam.
I would have to say, just so everyone knows, like I've
stuff.
heard Deicide songs before in the past. In my opinion, on this first listen to this, I think it's really formulaic for like what they've already done. I feel like I've heard this song from them already.
Right. It's formulaic, to them.
I think that you hit the nail on the head. I listened to this like 4 or 5 times because I couldn't make up my mind. Like, I couldn't quite put my finger on what is it about this that is just not doing anything for me. Because Deicide for me is almost in a roundabout way like Metallica, right? When a Metallica album comes out, no matter how much I've been disappointed by the stuff that's come out previously, I always am. There's part of me that's hoping that Redemption record is coming out, that there's going to be something they put out that I just go, whoa, these guys are back. Deicide's the same. I mean, I'm so pro Deicide. I'm probably one of the only people that I know that thinks that Till Death Do Us Part is an incredible record. But with this, I just don't know. We've been waiting since 2018 for a new album.
But there has to be something to be said about this, right? Like, how is it that like bands like that can't just put out the album that they like should? Is there something else behind it? Like Mike and I can like put out whatever the fuck we want, right? And like we might not have. We'll have like marginal like success like with our releases, right? But like, why is it like these guys are putting out like just mediocre bullshit? Like, how do they not have control of their IP? Like, how do they not have like any of this? Like, what are they doing this thing? Like, what are they like? You know what I mean? Like, what are they gaining from putting this out? It blows my mind. Like now, like, why would you even waste your time? Why would you?
I've pondered that question many times, and the only thing I can come back to, or the only answer I've been able to come back to in my mind that makes logical sense to me, and I've mentioned it on the podcast before. If I were to look at all of the old guard who I've had on this podcast, whose music I like let's take a couple of examples. Shane Embury, Greg McIntosh, obviously doing Strigoi at the moment, and he did Valenfire. So you think about the old guard who are putting out top-notch music, in their 50s, like in the late stages of their career. What is the one thing that's consistent with all of those people? And the one thing that's consistent with all of them, and I can't speak to Deicide because the last time I spoke to anyone from Deicide, it was to Steve, and that was around about the time that Till Death Do Us Part came out. But the thing that's consistent with all of these folks that I talk to, all of the old school, are they still really love music. Not necessarily death metal music, not necessarily black metal music, but they just holistically love music. Like you can get a passion from them. They will talk to you about new music they've discovered. They're not just guys like when you ask them, hey man, what are you listening to right now? Well, I only listen to shit that came out in, 1984. Everything else is trash. It's
Right.
like that's the only difference I've been able to suss between people that are doing it later on and doing an excellent job.
And that's what
And
we're doing. Like that's
yeah.
what we love. That's like what Mike and I like. That's why we like. Mike doesn't even listen to the same style of stuff. Like we came together because of our passion for like music together. Like we like that's the thing I'm talking about. I don't know. And maybe it's an arrogant thing to say because I mean we're not like here harping at their success. Bless your success. I'm so happy for anybody who's made it like out there playing music. There's no resentment here on that aspect. But when it comes to like just abjectly listening to music and critiquing music for whatever, Maya is just to be creative and enjoy that creative space. Other people have other reasons to play music. Of course they do, because there's so many people on this planet. So there's a lot of people who maybe have different like reasons for getting into playing music or continuing to play music. I don't know. But for me,
well, let me try something, right? So let's listen to another 60 seconds, and then I'm going to very quickly segue into an earlier Deicide song.
Okay.
And we compare where they are versus where they were. All right, now
it's a funny music video. It's funny.
Yeah. We go back in time to 1992 and behold this.
Yeah.
That is what death metal should sound like. And this is the thing, like there's a lot of people that I saw on the socials that really like that new Deicide single, and I mean, if somebody played it at their house, I'm not going to be offended by it. I'm not going to go turn that fucking bullshit off. But that's not how I shouldn't feel indifferent about a Deicide song. I should feel like I feel when I still to this day. Yeah,
well, that's on them. That's on them. Like those guys have the responsibility not to like just like be putting out formulaic albums over.
But that's my point. That's my verdict on the song. Like I want to. When it comes to Deicide, my expectations are such that I should feel fire in the belly when I hear it. I shouldn't feel indifferent, and that's how I feel about this new Deicide track.
Yeah, well, that you're not wrong. I don't think you're wrong in feeling that way. I think that's the normal way to feel. I think, unfortunately, these bands that we worship are like slaves to this shit because they had to put out this formulaic bullshit. Like, just it's good enough just to have like the Cannibal Corpse, pre Fisher should have just like been like the Bleeding, and don't need to like have to compare the two and all that kind of stuff. Like moments in like bands like careers is really really cool to have had been there and experienced that thing, and like we don't need to like extrapolate on that and like continue like doing like the formulaic bullshit where like now everyone has to sound like Frank Mullen if you're gonna do like New York fucking like metalcore like just hey, maybe just like make your sound like it's cool to do that. But I don't know. I mean, again, well, I have no horse in this race. I don't make any money doing this. I'm not in that world. But I listen to this music and it's just silly because it's like all these people are really, really good at what they do and they end up like wasting all their time doing like things that they think people want to hear instead of just doing what they should do.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Mike. A side note: this is a record you need to spend significant amounts of time with. It is an absolute
I'll do my
masterpiece.
homework for you.
The first two Deicide records are undeniably brilliant. I mean, they are to this day absolute masterpieces. All right, we move on. We've not really heard a huge amount of black metal yet. I was going to let us listen to Exit Eden, which again looks like one of Evan's bands. But instead, we listened to Merrimack, who have put out their new single, Dead and Distant Clamors.
First off, I want to say I loved I love the one they did, the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. That was like one of my favorite that's a Gordon Lightfoot.
What are you on about? Are you on about Exit Eden or Merrimack?
Merrimack. They did the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. It's a joke about boats.
What? All right. I'll tell you what I liked by this band. They did a record in 2012 called The Causal Mass. Or the Accusal Mass. There's a song on there called Worms in the Divine Intestine, which is fucking genius. Absolute genius.
I like the first one. The Entropy of Life Denial was a good one. I like them a lot. Yeah.
But anyway, so new album is going to be called Of Grace and Gravity. It is out in March. So let's give it a quick listen. Thoughts?
That was sick.
Yeah.
For me, not being much of a black metal fan, like that's the kind of black metal I like hearing nowadays and stuff. That was just dope.
Yeah. Unhinged, nasty shit.
Yeah. I'd have to say, I guess I'm more of a fan of like a lot more modern black metal, I guess. I don't know, me and Evan have had this conversation in the past before on my feelings about black metal, but I feel like a lot of it's gate kept and in people who are still doing black metal, bands that are doing it and stuff like this sounds good. I'm listening to it on pretty shitty computer speakers, but I can tell that the song is good and like everything through the mix and everything. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is
sinister shit going on there.
Yeah, like the gatekeeping and just like how they're black metal bands are still trying to sound like they're in the 90s still.
It's like there's definitely like you can hear that they found a cool chord, and like I love that too. Like when you find a really cool chord on the guitar and like you just play it and like you're like fuck, and then all you have to do is like just do like a slight like variation to like how you're holding that chord and it will sound even cooler. When you find that's a weird like what they're playing right, like the harmony they're playing right there and just that intro riff, like I can feel like why that would be like a lot of fun just to like and I appreciate that. Like, that's what we like about black metal is writing a really cool riff for the sake of like the really cool riff. Like that's what's interesting. That's what I think is fun about black metal and death metal and all of it. Really.
There's black metal bands to me that can blast until they're blue in the face, and it never convinces me. It just sounds like they're blasting because I think that's what they're supposed to do.
It's weak.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then
You can feel it, man. Like you really can. Like there's weak riffs. Like you listen to a lot of black metal bands that are like just weak, thin. They sound thin. That's what they sound like. They sound thin. And then there's a riff hits you in the face, and like you're just like, there's
an urgency and like a real sort of there's a real aggression, there's a real anger and hatred going on. And that's I love that. And it's interesting, like Mike's experience of it coming through the computer speakers, like it's just instantly convincing. That's the thing. It's like when I listen to black metal, I want to be convinced. I don't want to just feel like these guys are pretending. I want to be convinced they're a bunch of corpse paint wearing psychos. But all right, let's listen to some more.
Yeah.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I think the way that they're layering more atmospheric elements onto it as it progresses, I think is awesome. It still sounds pissed off even when they slow it down. This is for sure going up on my list of
I give this a 10 out of 10.
most anticipated records for this year. Speaking of which, I don't know if there's anything in particular you guys are looking forward to. I'm busy pulling together a list here. Infernal Sea, the new single they put out, is sensational. Vitriol, I think, is going to be just absolutely sick. I think that's going to be like the nightmare record of 2024. The new Chelsea Wolf sounds very, very good, especially that last single that she brought out. The new Job for a Cowboy singles have been really good. And then shockingly, and I did say this last year when I had it on the last news rant that I did in 2023, that new Bruce Dickinson single, holy Jesus, did that catch me by surprise. Like I was basically like sitting there ready to start, calling it trash and, run down old Bruce, but fuck, what a song.
I'm gonna have to check this. I didn't know he put out something like on his own outside of the group.
No.
Dude, I'm not even a particularly big Iron Maiden fan, and I was just, and if you go back and watch the episode, like I'm talking about it, and almost kind of sneering as I'm about to switch it on, and then I'm like a minute in, I'm like, holy shit, I did not think that he had that in him. But I know the thing that Evan is looking forward to: Stryper acoustic tour announced. For the first time ever, Stryper will be performing the hits and fan favorites acoustically. Check out the confirmed US dates for their To Hell with the Amps unplugged tour.
So I cannot confirm nor deny, but like, what's the guitar player from Stryper's name?
I don't know. Is it? I know. Is it like
Michael Stryper
or something? Is
something like that? Yeah.
Is he not the singer?
Is it Michael Stryper? I think it is, right?
Don't know.
Anyway, that guy lives.
He's your uncle.
No, he lives like where Mike lives and where
on Central Coast of California.
And the Central Coast of California. He's from there. Like he lives around there. Like I've seen him at like I don't know, metal shows and stuff. The dude,
Yeah.
like,
I mean,
he's
for
still,
all your listeners,
he's
like,
still, he still
Central
looks
Coast,
like
California is like the hidden gem where everyone is.
he's around.
His name is Michael Sweet. Actually, it's not Michael
Sweet.
Striper.
Well,
Yeah.
it should be Michael Striper. That would be better.
Yeah. All right, let's do one or two more, and then we'll make a quick stop over at Blabbermouth. We listened. Oh, I listened last time I did this to the first single they put out on this Exocrine record. Let's give this a listen quickly. So it says here, later this month on January 26th, tech death metalers Exocrine will unleash their 6th album, Legend. Today, the French quartet premiere the album's 3rd single, Eidolon. I kind of felt of the first single that I heard that Season of Mist were definitely after some more of that Arcspire money. Or some of that Arcspire kudos, because this band sounds awfully similar to that band. But yeah, give it a let's listen, and you guys tell me what you think. Fact that I'm letting it run past 60 seconds probably tells you what I think. That is very good. Very good. I actually like that more than I like Arcspire. Because I'm not really typically into that style of music, Mike, but yeah, this is pretty good. Yeah. There's so much different stuff going on here to keep it interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I'm not so much on the
shut up.
tech
You guys
death
tell
kind of
what
thing,
you
but, like, that's sick though.
Yeah. Evan, your thoughts?
I thought it was difficult to really hear what was going on. Felt like it was like too much, like in the mix, like it was like too much in the mids. I couldn't really like differentiate like between like the different like nuances they were trying to like show off. It was good music, but I didn't like how it was like presented. I think at least how
that is like, actually something that I thought of the first single. I thought the mix was too forward. It was like you know, if you see music as like this 3-dimensional thing, it was like every single instrument was right here in your face.
That's what it felt like. I didn't, like, no disrespect to them. I just it was like all of it.
Well, that dude looks pretty big, like, and I'm going to let him know like, that you think his band sucks.
It's fine, no, but like it'd be better if they. I feel like they like EQ'd it like in a cone and like forced it like all in your face instead of like separating like the different parts so you could hear it a little bit better. Would have been nicer.
Yeah, it sounds very compressed, the mix, but I like the song. I think those little discordant bits they throw in, the bits of melody sounds great.
For sure.
I actually like the whole vibe of the band. I do agree with you though. It's a shame that it's a little overly compressed.
Yeah.
All right, let's give it another 60 seconds.
So there's a slight missed opportunity there because I really liked where they were going when the song slowed down. I would have lingered on that a little bit more, like maybe flesh that idea out a little bit more.
Yeah, they wanted to get to that solo way too quick.
I think they have an idea, but I don't think they have it like sussed out yet. But they sound like they're on the right path though. They sound like they're doing certain things that are right, but yeah, other things are like tropey kind of.
Well, I mean, that's going to probably be completely irrelevant because when I tell that dude that Evan from Quell's been running you down,
that's fine.
I don't think he's going to take kindly to it, mate.
He had to find me first, but yeah.
Fortunately, I've got your address. I'll let him know. All right, let's head over very quickly to wrap things up to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music, Blabbermouth. John 5 says Metallica's Master of Puppets album is perfection. All the songs are so well written and well executed. Skillet's John Cooper was really surprised by the backlash he faced for comments about vaccine mandates and wearing masks. Really? David Vincent and Pete Sandoval to perform Morbid Angel's entire Altars of Madness album at Milwaukee Metal Fest. That could be pretty cool. Are you guys, are either of you thinking of attending the Milwaukee Metal Fest this year?
Nah, I'm not going to be able to. No. I got too much music stuff over here planned.
No.
I'm trying to have a quick gander at who's playing. So, I mean, Blind Guardian, Camelot, Symphony X. I mean, really, we're going down a laundry list of shite. And then we get to Marduk, cool. Incantation, Necrofire, very good. Testament, excellent. Mr. Bungle, Hatebreed.
Cloak, that's cool.
Yeah, Cloak. Our friends in Cloak, I should say. Soil and Green reunion. That'll be very cool.
Yeah.
Death to All, excellent.
Better of a lineup.
I was about to say, I think what they probably assumed was the first day is like all the 60 plus folk are going to come. Right. And when I say 60 plus, I mean 60 years and 60 pounds overweight. And they'll, by the time Hammerfall have thrilled them, they'll die of a heart attack. And then, they can get the real deal on. Sunday, May 19th, Slaughter to Prevail. Slaughter to Prevail, by the way, one of the worst names I've ever heard for a band. It's on a par with Employed to Serve, just in terms of
listened to their music idiocy. Before though?
No.
I would give it a chance. I kind of agree with you. The name maybe slightly a little silly or whatever, but
I like smart stuff.
If you like any of like the older like Slipknot albums, I think there might be something a little there for you. Like Slaughter to Prevail is like pretty damn good in my opinion.
Well, we're about to find out.
Yeah,
and if it's I dread to think of the booing and mocking that you're going to get. What one?
Baba Yaga or Viking. Either one of those two are really, really good songs.
All right. Let's go with Viking because it's the most recent one, at least according to the video.
No, because that's the most manly thing that you could click on. That's why. That's what it is.
Well, that dude does look. I mean, he looks like John Joseph's angry, illegitimate child. he's like on the video. He's yelling, "Dad, guess what? I've started eating meat."
I just took a shit.
All right, let's hear this. Like I said, I dread to think of the mockery you're gonna have to endure.
I've actually never heard this song either. So let's go.
All right.
Язык меча, что ж, так прольется кровь, мой язык бескостный станет железом, чтобы говорить, что
It's not really that heavy, is it? It's actually
It's
not
all
that
right.
heavy.
I'm
Yes,
more.
but it's not that heavy. Like if you put like Skinless, like the Optimist, up against this,
Yeah.
I would say Skinless, the Optimist, is heavier than that song is. Because it's like life sucks and then you die. Do 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 do. Like it's a heavier song in a
I can
sense.
I can
Like,
definitely see the Slipknot comparisons that you're making though.
yeah.
It's much better than Slipknot, but as a matter of fact, like what I really wished for as I watched this video was a showdown to the death between this singer and Corey Taylor. And we can see if Corey Taylor holds on to his Corey motherfucking, Corey MF Taylor belt that he was fucking waving around in that last music video of his. But yeah, you'll escape the mockery. It's not, it's not quite my vibe. Let's just have a very
imagine being famous for wearing a mask and then feeling like you should like be entitled for some shit. Like just like be humble that you got where you are.
agree.
Like it's so amazing that like you are where you are. like just fucking like just shut your mouth and just like ride it out. It blows my mind when people get that like little lucky draw and they just like run. They just can't like just enjoy it. Like they just have to.
Well, let's have a very quick palate cleanser, and then we'll wrap it up on Blabbermouth. That is pure genius, my friends. Of the 260,000 views of that video, probably at least 10,000 of them are mine. Like, I just stumbled on this by mistake once, and I was fucking depressed because I was like, we were robbed of a Pantera covers Kiss record because, fuck, that's good.
Yeah.
That is absolute genius.
Did you see the tour? Did you watch it? The one?
No, they're not playing in the UK yet.
They haven't done it yet. Okay.
No. I think they're actually playing at some point this year. I don't have I don't have tickets for it, but do I know a lot of folks that have seen it and they say it's excellent. The Duke of Metal actually said it was one of the best things he's ever seen. So I might make a point of going to watch it. But like for me, it's the thing with Pantera. It's not just Phil and Rex. It's that. Like you can hear it on that recording that we just heard now. It's that connection that that Vinny and Dime had. It's this weird like telepathy when they play. Like it's that groove is on a completely primal level. It's like there's nothing about it feels rehearsed. Nothing about it feels in any way.
That's a really good point.
About. Yeah,
that's a really good point. It's like I don't want to pay a lot of money to have a primal experience. Like, like if I'm going to do that, I'll just go to like some dirty, like, basement show and watch like you can't recreate that. Like if you're going to go there and see it, I think you should do it because you want to do it because you want to hear those songs being played live or something like that. But like, you're not going to be able to go there and have like the Pantera Metallica Russia show or something like that, like happen before your eyes.
No,
it's not going to be that.
No, like I said, I think the big thing is you cannot recreate. I don't give a fuck who's playing guitar and who's playing drums. You can't recreate the connection between Vinny and Dime. You can't do it. And
Totally
so
agree.
and for me that's part of it. There's at least 50% of the magic
Well, nor should you,
of
and
Pantera.
and that's maybe part of the reason why you do where you don't go to a show. In my opinion, it's like, do you sully it by going and seeing like these old geriatric like people doing, going through the motions of something, or do you just like let it lie and be
Well,
like,
the thing is, I still think Phil is a good performer. I saw Down a couple of years ago, and they were fantastic. So Down, I would absolutely go and see.
sure,
But
yeah,
that's a different vibe because you've got Kirk, you've got mostly the original members of the band playing in the band. So, but with Pantera, it's just different. I don't
yeah.
know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. We're gonna wrap things up. Let's have you, Evan, introduce the new what's the name, Quell single, and then we'll say goodbye to the people.
All right. Well, hey, thanks again for having me on here, Jackie. And this is Quell and Catacombs, the new split that we did together. This is the Bound by Spores EP. We're gonna lead on into ergotism, and then we're gonna take off with Bound by Spores. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Thanks very much to you guys for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks to my guest, Nathan Glover of Graveir, for doing the main portion of or at least the first part of my Albums of the Year countdown with me. I will be back next week with the Sinister Minister, Carl Hikara, and the Duke of Metal for part 2 of my Albums of 2023 countdown. In the meantime, whatever it is that you're doing, wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.
Time, prepare to start.